What's up, y'all? Today we are speaking with Rodger Willis.
Hey, hey,
What's going on, man?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Everything's good, everything's good. We also have Vlady Veselinov, or I never said your last name. How you say your last name?
You're one of the few people that managed to get it right from the first time. Hey, y'all.
What's happening, Vlady?
Pretty good over here, Glasgow, Scotland. Late night, 12:30.
But you're wide awake, and that's a good thing.
Yes, sir.
That's what's up. And Joe Baffy. What's going on, Joe?
Oh, not too much, guys. I just
You got some hair on your face, man. I don't think you had hair the last time I saw you. Is that true?
It could be. It could be true. Yes, yes.
And maybe you're just a little hairier.
It's just the light's right, and it's gleaming off the whiteness of it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Making it look like a beard, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So
my lack of attention to detail.
There you go. So last time we were chatting, Rodger, I think you said you specialize in gospel music.
I wouldn't say specialize, but
okay. One of your genres is gospel music.
Niche or niche, depending on what part of the world you're from.
Exactly.
It's a little niche of mine, and I work with a lot of, well-known gospel artists, and kind of once you get plugged in, they refer to the people that are their peers, and so it just kind of continues to roll on that way. And so I've been fortunate to, have a stable customer base in that genre. But I also do a lot of jazz too.
Okay, good deal. So let's.
I do whatever pays within reason. All money is not good money, though. I have said no quite a few times to some projects.
There you go. What do you? Let's talk about vocals. What do you think about, or what styles do you like to use to make sure that as a song is becoming more majestic, the vocal isn't getting lost inside the song if you leave the vocal at the same volume?
I missed the beginning of what you said because.
Yeah, I'll repeat it. What I said was, as far as vocals, as a song goes on, it basically gets louder, more majestic, etc.
Mm-hmm.
What techniques do you like to use to make sure that your vocal doesn't get lost in the song?
I mean, there's a couple different things, primarily automation. But there's tools like Vocal Writer that you can use. But the rule is the star never gets lost. That's the basic rule. It's amazing how many commercial records I hear, and that actually happens to some degree, some more than others. But in my world, that's a basic fundamental for me, is that I never ever lose the star. So a lot of people that mix, and I've gotten mixes from people that they've sent to me sessions to check out, and I see absolutely no automation, and I'm trying to understand how anyone calls a mix with absolutely no automation. I've never been able to do it. So long story short, I'm riding the vocals, or I'm using tools that can do it, like Vocal Writer, which is a pretty neat product that Waves has. If any of you guys haven't ever used it, it's pretty neat. They have a bass writer product too. But I'm kind of old school. It's just good old-fashioned automation.
So not really things like using micro shifters or delays or anything like that?
Well, I definitely use effects as appropriate. But in terms of losing my vocalist, that portion of that for me is just primarily handled with just automation, making sure that my vocalist is appropriately out front, not too far, not just appropriately out front. As the music changes dynamically, I want to make sure that my vocalist stays where he or she needs to be.
Okay, and as far as delays or verb or whatever, is that something that you find? First of all, do you produce and mix, or do you specifically mix?
I do produce. A lot of times I get customers in here that don't want to pay for my production, so when they're not paying for it, I don't give it.
Hey, there you go.
So, and also, oftentimes the majority of the time, the artists that I'm working with, they have producers, and I had to learn to keep my mouth shut and just press the record button and not say anything unless, of course, there's something technically that happened that I'm responsible for. Let's say, for example, that clipped me, or
Sure.
a mic got moved, or something along those lines that I'm clearly responsible for. But other than that, my job is to press the record button. If I'm recording, I just don't say anything. So, and actually, I learned that the hard way some years ago because I was offering my production assistance and it got me in trouble. So, that's the producer's job to determine whether the take is a good take or a bad take, or this technically isn't my, unless I'm acting as a producer to determine that, or to say we should do some other takes and maybe position ourselves to do some comping later or whatever. That's not my call. So, word to the wise for you guys that are not actually recording customers. If you're not if your customer has a producer, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, I
Rodger,
agree with
I
you there.
Sorry, Joe.
No, go ahead, Vlad. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, Rodger, I wanted to ask you. Let's say when you have to do everything, producing and mixing and recording. Do you do something in order to kind of stay sane throughout all of the processes and not and keep being productive? Because I'm in this situation right now where the artist I'm working with is really good, but they can't really afford to get another person in, so I'm pretty much doing everything for them. And what's your process when you have to do everything yourself?
Well, let me just make sure we're clear on something. Are you getting paid in all these roles, or is this just you're just doing it out of the kindness of your heart, or what? What's the deal there?
I'm not getting paid. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not getting paid, but I really like the artist, so.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. I just wanted to know because, I mean, really, first of all, people really need to understand what the producer's role is, and I'm going to assume that you know that. So, in answer to your question, my thing is I want to have a clear understanding of what the goal of the artist is, and the most difficult part of producing is when you're producing as someone that doesn't trust you as the producer. For me, anyway. And sometimes that may mean that you're not a good fit as the producer because the producer and the artist need to be on the same page, and the artist needs to be able to trust the producer. Not that the artist doesn't have a say, but sometimes a producer is a producer because they're used to producing and they understand what it takes to get the product where the customer needs it to be. And so there's an extreme amount of trust that needs to be there with the producer and the artist. So if that isn't there, then that can make things really kind of difficult. Because sometimes the artist is saying one thing and you're saying something else, and you're diametrically opposed potentially. And again, I don't know the dynamic of the relationship with your artist, but when I'm producing, I make that clear. I'm not suggesting that it's a dictatorship, but I really, if I feel very strongly about something, generally I win that, and it doesn't tend to be that frustrating. If I say, hey, I need another take, or let's punch here, let's do that over. I'm pushing my artist to get exactly what I need so that the end result is what they actually told me that they wanted to begin with, and I need them to understand that I'm not just doing it, to be a jerk, or whatever. So I don't know. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. So you're saying that you make sure that you and the artist are on the same page before you do anything.
Yeah, you have to. The roles need to be defined. If you're a producer, you need to your artist needs to understand what that means. Sometimes they think being the producer is a guy that's recording the music and all of that, and it's so much more than that. You're the guy that's literally making, artistic decisions. is it good or is it bad, or maybe we need to do it like this, or I need more emphasis on that. And you know, you're telling the musicians what and how to play sometimes, or you know, telling the artist, I need, you know, as the singer, I need more passion or less passion, or I need close your eyes and turn off the lights and do what you need to do. You need to get ugly when you sing this, or whatever you need to get out of them to get what you're trying to get. It's that creative side of the person, sort of like the director at the movie. You know, when the director's directing the movie, he's producing. You know, he can see the net result, but if he can't get what he needs out of his actors or actresses, then they need to figure something out to get what he needs. It's like the bomb wasn't big enough. I need it bigger. You know, so all those types of decisions are producer role decisions, and the artist and the producer need to have an agreement, you know, about what that means and what your role is, and whether they accept it.
Thanks so much, man. It's always been kind of ubiquitous for me, because when we recently met to discuss what we're going to do, so we are just starting to work together, and it's a female artist, and she, you know, she's one of the people where you really have to be careful, you know, because she's kind of shy, and I'm trying to be in the position where she understands everything, and we all respect each other's work without anyone being offended. So that's why I'm asking, because I see it's a delicate situation, and I don't know how to approach it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's definitely a dynamic with any relationship, and you know, you have to be wise in the way that you work, you know, with her. But at the end of the day, if she, you know, there has to be clear understanding of what your role is and what that means. And if she trusts you as a producer, I'm assuming that it's because she's familiar with other work that you've done, perhaps, and you know, she's like, hey, you know, you did a great job with this or that, and you know, I want something along those lines. But sometimes the artist doesn't want to yield at all, you know, to the producer. And when that happens, and I'm not suggesting that that's happening now, but it can be difficult. And I've stepped away as a producer when I've had customers like that, because nothing I say matters. And it's like, you know, I need to do that again, or you know, let's run that again. You know, that take wasn't what we need. And they're like, no, I'm not doing it. There's nothing wrong with that one. I'm like, okay, well, we're done here. If I'm going to be the producer, you know, if you're telling me that, you know, it's good enough, and I'm telling you it's not good enough, and you're not willing to meet me in the middle or meet me half, you know, someplace, and you know, maybe it's not a good fit. You know, it's like the coach. You know, and when you play sports, sometimes you don't respect the coach until you start winning. You know, once you got a new coach and you start winning, then you can actually start to see the vision of that coach, and you buy into what the coach is trying to tell you. Then you start to respect the coach, and sometimes the artist doesn't really respect the producer very much in the beginning, especially if they don't know you very well. What's happening, Andrew?
Hey guys, it's another late night.
You were asleep
session.
last week.
Yeah, because it's the same time as last
After
week.
these guys are in jolly old. They're over there. It's like midnight and 1 a.m. for them.
Yeah, man. Like I've been.
Take a 5-hour energy drink or something.
I actually detest like Red Bull and any kind of energy drinks entirely. I can't deal with it. It makes me a bit shaky, you know. So I just power through. Like I might have a cup of tea, or maybe I'll have like a sandwich. That normally helps, like a strange carb boost. But anyway, yeah, I'm fine. How are you guys? Let's not talk about my dietary requirements.
Good. Hey, Vlady, did I answer your question, Vlady? I'm sorry, I kind of digressed there.
Mm-hmm.
Are you good?
Hey, Vlad, okay, this is my mixing hat, okay?
Uh-oh.
This is, you know, when I'm mixing, I'll put this hat on, right?
I thought somebody called a cab.
Now, if I'm producing, you'll see me wearing this hat, okay?
There you go.
It's got a little bit more, you know, shit to it, right? I kind of like to keep it on the side like that. You know, just
Snazzy,
now,
I can dig it.
if I don't want anybody to talk to me, I just put this one on. And I kind of do it a little sideways, like, you know, like I kind of move my eyebrow funny. And now this is my best one, because this is when I'm really having a hard time with these folks. I sneak out the back door and I go in the front door wearing this. Okay, you got to make sure you get it kind of tight, you know. And I say, what are you guys doing in there? You know, and of course then I run back through, you know, back door. Say, hey, what's going on? Are you following? No. All right, let me explain a little bit. It's impossible to wear all those hats at the same time, man, unless your head's going to boil. So, you know, what was just said is the key. You're going to lay it out right in the beginning, man. And it's about that trust thing. You know, you're the lady, she's going to trust you. And when she starts doubting you, sometimes, you know, for me, I just bring it up. Hey, you trust me? You still trust me? Then let's keep working. And that'll put an end to it, you know. If it doesn't, then it might be you know, one of those moments where you got to reevaluate your relationship and say maybe we're not the best fit, you know, because literally all those hats can get crazy. They really can. And you know, trying to bring a little levity to the subject, but it becomes important to people. You know, they want you to respect them. You need them to respect you. And when they start hearing what you do to their stuff, that's kind of like, you know, getting a couple wins under the belt of the coach. But until that happens, you still got to bridge the gap between, you know, your communication efforts. And there's times, you know, my worst client ever in my life had a hat that was like that famous guitar player. A freaking top hat. What's his name? Yeah, Slash. Thank you. And the vocal booth at the time, I mean, it was a pretty good sized booth. You could put a guy in there with an acoustic guitar and play, all right? And but it was only 7.5 feet tall. And this dude's 6'3", and he's got a freaking 2-foot hat on, right? And he wants to sing it he wants to wear it in a booth. And it was really, and he threw a tantrum. You know, how can I sing in a place like this? Jesus Christ, you know, a bunch of midgets living here. And it was pretty, I mean, he really cut my place down, and he, you know, kind of cut me down. And I didn't have any choice but to tell him to pack his shit up and go. I had to put the funky hat on and run out the back door and run back in the front, because he was just an asshole, and that was all there was to it. And it wasn't, you know, and I could see that it was going to be a dead-end street, man, because there was no trust, you know, at all. You know, whether I did something wrong on the front, I don't know, because I never really felt like it was worth working it out, you know.
Good points.
All right. And I just reiterated what you said, you know, basically.
Yeah.
And because that's about the only way to say it, is right in the beginning, man. You establish, you know, the roles, and you try to stick to it as best as, you know, as you can as a human, because we have a tendency to, you know, sometimes have troubles.
Yeah, it really is important, you know, just to underscore again, you know, what Joe said and, you know, what I said before.
Yeah.
You know, it's really important to clearly understand what the role is right away, right at the beginning, so that there's no misunderstanding. Because sometimes your artist may not really know what producing is. You know,
exactly. That's it.
I know what produce is, and so it's more than just okay. What did you record? How was it recorded? How did you sound? Was it good enough? Did you enunciate properly? Did you, you know, just, you know, did you give me what I need, even though you gave it to me? Was it what we need? And, you know, all those decisions are producer decisions. And sometimes the artist doesn't really understand that, and they think it's good enough, but it's really probably not, or maybe it's not the vision of the producer to get that person where, you know, oftentimes the artist doesn't even know their full potential. The producer does.
Right.
The artist doesn't, like a coach. A coach can see a potential in a player that the player can't see. And so it takes a good producer to be able to, you know, extract that from them and get them to a place that they never even thought they could get to. And that's why the big name producers make the big bucks, you know, because they have a history, and, you know, they've got hardware that says that, hey, I'm really good at this, and either you're going to work with me and let's get there, or maybe I'm not the best fit for you.
That's exactly
But in
it.
any case, producers get paid.
Yeah, they do. Something that I've never really shared with you guys. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a boxer, and I don't know, I must have fell down as a kid or something. And I went to the best gym in Detroit, was Kronk Recreation. Tommy Hearns was just turned pro. This is back in '78, and it was pretty tough there. There was no doubt about it. They did not give you an inch. And my trainer, the guy who worked with me directly, his name was Tommy Rollins, and he took his orders from Emmanuel Stewart. There was a hierarchy there, and he explained to me just right out front, there's no way you can see yourself and the guy in front of you at the same time. All you see is what's in front of you. I see both. So you're going to do what I tell you no matter what. And now that's a little extreme because it's more of a combative situation, but there's no question about it. There were times when he'd give me directions, and I would not want to follow them, but I knew he was right. And that is the level of trust that I try to bring to work with me every day. That if I know I'm right about something, I really try to express those feelings. If I'm not really sure, then I back off and give more than I should say push less. Because you really do know. When you work with this girl, you'll know those moments when she just nails it and the moments when she's kind of not. You'll know the difference.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen the movie, I don't know, what's the movie that had Bill with Ike and Tina Turner?
Oh, what's love got to do with it?
What's love got to do with it? Ike was actually a good producer. He was just abusive.
Yeah. That's kind of what I took away from it.
When he said, "Sing the song, Anime," Anime sings. He wasn't getting that passion that he knew was there. That can be transmitted to the listener. She wasn't bringing that, that passion. She was singing the song, but you couldn't believe her. She had to get mad and sing the song because there's a passion that translates. Not that you want to make your artist mad. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that's a clear example of like an extreme form of producing. But he got out of her what he needed.
Mm-hmm.
So don't go slapping your artists around, Vlady.
Yeah.
No. I'm very, very delicate because it's we have done things indirectly before. But I try to be as diplomatic as possible because the feelings are.
Okay, so do you guys have a romantic involvement?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Entirely friendly and professional.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this. I know that he's good, but sometimes as a producer, it's not going to be diplomatic.
Right.
Sometimes you're just gonna have to say, "Hey, you know what? That's not gonna work," and you have to look at them and mean exactly what you say. You can't. One thing I've learned, not just in this world, but in my former business world and whatnot, you can't be, and I'm not suggesting that you are, but you can't say things in a wishy-washy way. It has to be I have to say it in such a way where you're gonna be convinced when I say it. It's like you're not even going to challenge me because the way I'm going to say what I need to say to you is going to be in such a way where you're probably not going to challenge it. You're either going to not like me and not want to work with me, or you're not going to challenge me because you're going to believe what I'm saying to you, and you're going to at least try what I'm asking you to do. But if it's like, hey, I really kind of need you to, would you try this? That sometimes that doesn't work. And if she has a strong personality, you might need to amp it up a little bit.
Yeah, she's a very gentle person, so I don't know.
You'll get it.
But I mean, the other problem is the question is why you're the one on the controls to begin with. You know what I'm saying? It's like sometimes people come to you because you're that friend who's just going to take forever to let them eventually get something good or never get anything good and output bad quality and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it's because they know you know what you're doing. So when you say, you know what, that wasn't anywhere near the tune, you got to do it again. There's no need to be all, flowery about it. Just do it again. We can't use that. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amen.
You got to get a little New York in you. No, just kidding.
Yeah. You want to borrow my my hoodie? No, this is a little more Detroit, maybe.
Are you saying that I should tell them to get out of here?
No.
Just tell them you're walking here.
As an inside joke, Vlady and I have from the Brower mixed with the Masters video.
Get out of here.
But yeah, guys, thank you so much for this insight. It's really helpful for me, and it's when I start doing them from the beginning, these things, it really feels better down the road, and that's why I'm asking these questions. So, but yeah, we were talking about automation earlier, and I wanted to ask you guys some questions on how I know it's kind of subjective, but how do you automate the vocals? I mean, when let's say you have your track ready, it's rolling, and how do you move? Where do you bring the volume up? Where do you go down? How much do you go down? What's the process you're thinking behind the automation? Is it just feel, or is there another thing to it?
I think it's subjective. It's relationship. That vocal in relationship to everything else that's going on. Speaking for myself, it's about the relationship to the rest of the accompaniment. If the accompaniment is building, if the accompaniment is driving, I need to drive my vocal, make sure that the placement of my vocal is appropriate. If things are like coming down, then I need to bring the vocal down so that she's not or he's not so far out front to where it's not appropriate. And so, but then I also have artists that I work with. They have their own idea where they want their vocals to sit. So sometimes it's a combination. When I do a mix and I give a reference to my customer, they'll say, "Hey, I want my vocal up here," and I'm like, "Okay, I learned a long time ago if the man wants a can of soup, give him a can of soup." I'm not the producer. That's where he said he wants his vocal. That's where I'm going to put it. But some people like their vocals way out front, and some people like their vocals just above, the rest of the band, so that they're appropriate, but not so far out. There's kind of blowing away the band there a little bit, but I think it's more feel. For me, it's more feel and how I hear the music in terms of the vocals and the placement. No magic.
Recently, with automation, can you guys hear me? Okay, it's not breaking. Cool, sweet. I found myself like automating my A bus, which is like my drums and my bass from that Browerizer thing, doing that first and having all the low end energy sorted out, and then I'll automate the vocals after that and everything else around it. So then I've got like a really solid bass for all like the. Sorry, I'm tired. Yeah, all the energy in the track, and then that kind of gives me a guide for how the vocal should sit and where it should come up and down along with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, let's say when I was trying automation, sometimes it works out. I've spent a lot of time doing it, and then I was just thinking, okay, so I want to see if this is any good because I don't trust myself doing automation. So I compared two versions of my automation versus, let's say, like a vocal writer or something. And sometimes it's the vocal writer does it much better, and I was wondering what is the if it's not only if there's another thing in addition to the feel of it.
When you perform your automation, how are you doing it? Do you have some sort of control surface, or are you
That's
drawing?
what I was about to say. Go ahead.
Well, I usually play the track in touch mode, so I have the vocal balanced roughly, and I automate it with a mouse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not bad. I think what you're maybe fishing for is, all right, what do I do to get my vocal to the point where I'm going to automate it? And I'm going to make sure that the quietest part of my vocal is at pretty much the quietest that I want it, and the loudest part is, in other words, the dynamic range of it. I'm going to get that dynamic range dialed in first. Do you understand? That way I know I have heard it a few times through, and I've got the dynamic range right where I want it to be. And then it's really becomes, it's all subjective, but at that point, then I'm ready to automate. In other words, volume automation. Okay, sometimes I use EQ automation instead of volume, or both, in tandem. And I'm not as good as some of these guys that say they can, use 5, 6 fingers. I usually 2 fingers is about all I can do. One in each hand. Or I'll turn a knob, to dial in my EQ if I want a little more presence during a certain part that's getting thick. Rather than try to bring the volume up so much, I might have the volume where I need it, but I just need more clarity. So that's when I might bump up, 4,500 or something, 500, whatever it is on the vocal that gives me that, makes it so I can hear the diction better. Do you understand? So it's not always for me volume. It can come down to the EQ choices that I want to make or change.
Absolutely correct.
And I do that with acoustic guitar all the time. When it gets thick, I bring up the high end, 10K maybe, as long as it's not too pick slappy. And then during quieter times, I'm going to bring that high end down so it doesn't sound thin.
Yeah, because when the guitar's out there by itself, you want it to sound like a guitar.
Yeah, exactly.
But when the guitar is in the confines of the rest of the mix, you got to do what you got to do so that because the other frequencies that are along with the rest of the music kind of make up, for what you're rolling off in essence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got it right.
I never for that reason, because they know what their instrument sounds like and they can't hear it in the confines of the mix. They're just hearing what I may be doing at the time. I'm like, hey. You got my guitar sounding thin. You got to listen to it in the mix.
Right.
And when you're doing a solo or some things are quiet, and we got to make your guitar sound like your guitar.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And and I have to be honest with you, I didn't start automating EQ for a long time. I didn't think of it.
Yeah.
And I got a mix that was really heavy with mid-range items. Lower register violin and trombone, and the shakers were big ass hollowed out fruit. And that's not fruit; it's some kind of not a pumpkin, but you see them during Halloween time. Anyway, it's like a squash. It looks like a squash, but it's called something different, and it's hollowed out with seeds in it. And it makes a shaker sound, but it's low pitched because it's so big. Anyway, that's when it finally dawned on me that I could freaking automate the equalizer and change all kinds of stuff in a mix and have it work out, better than trying to use compression and then volume rides.
Yeah. And sometimes what I've done in the past, and I still do it sometimes, if I don't want to get all into the automation on the plugin, which just about every parameter of the plugin can be automated, but sometimes I'll duplicate that section of the track, put it on another track, and just process that thing, that phrase, or that word, or that way. So that way I don't have to worry about the automation when it hits that spot.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good trick too. That's a good one.
I do
It
that
really
with dynamic vocalists. If
Yeah.
like the rest of the song's kind of quite quiet and there's one bit at the end which is just nuts, I'll just put it on a separate track
Yeah.
and sort it out individually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, otherwise you have 10 automation lanes.
Yeah, and that's exactly the reason why I do that sometimes. Sometimes I'll just go ahead and automate, the plugin, or I may just, like I said, just duplicate that section of it and process that, and that way I don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Earlier when Vlady was started the conversation and you asked him if he was using a mouse or had like a control surface, how much do you think having like a control surface like faders or whatever affects the quality of your mix? So do you think a more natural and say dynamic surface like the artist mixes something is going to make your mixes better, or is it just a case of utilizing a tool differently?
I think for me, it just depends on what you're used to. I mean, I grew up in front of a console, and so I was just used to having my hands on faders. For a person who's, started their journey with a mouse, that's comfortable for them, and they make it work.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I've got, 3 artist mix, artist control, and a transport sitting in front of me. I'm just used to having my hands on faders. Something that Joe said earlier, I don't really ever I'm not usually ever moving like 5 faders or anything like that at a time because I'm using groups or VCAs or whatever, so it's never that situation. It's just something about the feel of the fader for me. But before I got these, I used a mouse. When I crossed over to the digital world, I used a mouse and I did it successfully, and I had great mixes. So I don't think personally, for me, it impacts the quality of my mix.
That's interesting. I use a trackpad on my laptop, and you actually get loads of sensitivity. So if I want to move just point of a dB, I just move my finger the tiniest amount, and it's there. But I've wanted an artist mix or some faders for ages, but I wonder if it's superfluous for what I need. If it's just maybe I think I need a new piece of gear to sound better instead of actually getting better at my craft.
Right. One thing I will say about the control surfaces real quickly, and I find you guys experience things that I find key, whether you're using a mouse or a control surface or whatever, is the resolution of that fader is not good when it's too low.
Right.
So the closer you are to 0, to unity, the resolution gets finer. And so when I look at, one of the things I do before I start a mix is I always say, in Khaliq and Dave and those guys always say, fix it before you mix it. It's true. I'll gain up my tracks if I need to. I'm gaining them down if I need to, so that I know, my fader position is going to be closer to unity to begin with. And so when I need to make subtle adjustments, the resolution is always finer, closer to unity, than when your fader is way down below there. It's very difficult to get minute changes when your fader is too low. Whether it be mouse, whether it be a control surface, or whether you're drawing automation or whatever, the resolution is just not the same to me. So.
Oh, it is. It's not the same. Period. It really isn't. That's a fact. If you look at your control surface, if you see one, in fact, in front of me, at Unity, I have an inch between Unity and -10. And then from -10 to -20, I've got a ½ an inch. And then to 30, I've got a ¼ inch. So, I mean, that's where you get that. I don't know. It's just how it is, period. Even in your Pro Tools session, I can't say other DAWs for sure, but if you look at the way the scale's laid out, you'll see that there's a lot more wiggle room right at Unity. Unity +5 and then Unity -5.
Yeah, definitely. I've been doing a mix with Logic X today, and I've found the difference between -6 and like 0 on their scales is so tiny. Like I've been really struggling to kind of work out where my levels are when I'm trying to gain stuff up. But I've not used Logic X in ages because I've started using Pro Tools, and I just find that a lot easier with the ballistics, like the fact that I can change what it is now.
Have you ever come across the PreSonus fader port?
Possibly, yeah.
I haven't ever used one, but I've heard a couple of people that, yeah, Bill's got it up, switched to linear,
Right.
linear scale. That'll give you bigger
I just do the same.
distances. Yes.
I'll do that.
I've heard some people say a lot of good things about PreSonus fader port. It doesn't take up a lot of space, and you still get a transport and a fader in the module, plus some other programmable buttons, I believe.
Yeah.
And $100 US approximately. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Did you
apart,
ever play,
it's like
did you ever play an actual video game, Andrew?
Sorry?
Did you ever play an actual video game, like in a cabinet?
Oh yeah. Like
Street Fighter, for instance.
Tekken.
Tekken, thank you, perfect. All right, so Tekken has a joystick, right?
Yeah.
All right, so then did you try to play Tekken on a video game controller?
Yes.
All right, that's the difference between having a console and not. There are certain things you can do, like for instance, if you're playing a game like, let's say Pac-Man had the stick, and then you could hold it certain different ways, and depending on how you held it, you could use different techniques, right? So you would move differently. Like you might spin your hand like that if you were like in Street Fighter or something, and that would make Fireball come out, right? So you can't do this on a game controller because you're just doing this. See what I mean? So it's a different way.
Totally.
So that's one of the things about faders. Is that, I mean, I'd suggest that you try it for yourself. Go on down to whatever store or studio has some and try some out for yourself to see if it makes a difference to you. Because to me, it makes a difference to have physical faders, because sometimes I'll fade this way. Sometimes I'll grab the fader and do this. Sometimes I just tap it. Like if I'm in touch mode, I might just tap the bottom of the fader that way, right? And you can't do these things if you have a flat screen, like if you're using an iPad or whatever you're talking about. So that's one of the differences of having it. I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying that for me it works better than something flat. Yeah, and what happens is, for me, I have a physical relationship to the sound. So sometimes I might just have my hand down, and all I'm doing is what you can't really see. All I'm doing is this. It's like a very slight movement, right? But
You got some really long fingers, man. Like what the?
It's the better the mix with it. But anyway, so the point is,
long fingers, Cammack.
right? So anyway, the point is that I'm only doing very slight movements, right? But I know that if I move this much, I'm too high. This much, I'm too low, and I know exactly where it needs to be. You can't feel exactly where it needs to be on a trackpad, which I have right here. I've done that.
What does Dave Pinsato use?
He uses a trackball.
Trackball, right. So
I
he can
use
hold
a
the button
trackball
down and move that ball almost like a. There you go.
Like
right.
Yeah. He uses a trackball. A lot of people use mice. I mean, but then the other thing is that there's a couple different types of automation. Like, some people feel like, I mean, technically it is automation, but some people feel like they're automating when they use the pen and they draw something in. When no transport is even playing, nothing's even playing, and they're drawing stuff and they feel like they're automating. Or maybe they'll grab a section and they'll just pull it down as one bar. They feel like they're automated. That's totally different from you have a lead vocal and then you have a vocal double, right? And this goes back to the automation thing you guys were talking about before. The way people are taught to mix at this point is to stuff everything into compressors anyway. So it doesn't matter how much you move faders because all you're saying is I'm sticking this at this level, I'm sticking this at this level, and then I'm going to decide what's between here and here. But if you're not doing that, then let's say the vocal double, the volume goes up and down relative to your main vocal. Well, what are you going to do with that? Either you're going to stick it under a leveler and you're going to keep it right here, or you're going to fade it yourself. So that even if it was sung in a way that the volume was highest when it started and lowest when it ended, you can fade it yourself in a different way where you can have the volume go up instead of down. So you can make your own expression out of the situation by fading it yourself instead of just sticking it under a compressor.
I mean, theoretically, you know, what's a compressor? I mean, it controls dynamic range. If you want to, you'd never even have to use it. You could just use a fader for everything, theoretically.
Well, yeah, that's my point.
Use them.
That's my
Since
point.
clip gain works so well, I have used clip gain like, oh man, it has really enhanced my workflow tremendously.
A clip gain is my de-esser most of the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because I find that most de-essers just can't give me what I want. You know, so I'll use clip gain adjustments on those sibilant portions.
Absolutely, I agree with you there, man. 100%.
Anybody else do that?
Oh, I clip gain the hell out of it, man.
Yeah, I manually de-ess, but also clip gain. This came up in a Mixed Wednesday discussion that Ryan John was holding. One of the things about clip gain is that it occurs before your plugins instead of after. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to, let's say you have a vocal and then you have a fader, if you want to ride that vocal into the compressor, you have to route that to another track with the compressor because then it's going to be after the fader. But if you have the compressor on that vocal, then clip gain allows you to say how much is going into the compressor before you get to the fader. So that's useful because if you leave the vocal as is, then some of it is going to press the compressor more than you want, and some is going to press it less than you want.
I think you lost me, Bill.
You mean it dropped out, or?
No. I think I lost something that you were saying.
What I'm saying, okay. What I'm saying is, let's say you have a vocal, right? And let's say you have a compressor on that vocal, and that vocal has a fader. The fader is going to be or after the compressor, correct?
You got that matrix thing going on.
Oh. Okay, let me try again. All right. If you have a vocal and you have a compressor on that channel, right? And then you have a fader on that channel, that's the order of operations. Is the vocal waveform, then the compressor, then the fader.
In Pro Tools, absolutely.
Right, yeah.
You have the ability to do pre and post fader at the plug-in level. But anyway, we're talking about Pro Tools.
Exactly. So the only way you're going to get the only way you're going to affect the waveform before the compressor with the fader is if you move the compressor to another channel and you route that first channel to the second one. See what I mean?
Yes. I mean, what you could do is, you could route it to an auxiliary.
That's what I'm saying.
All the time. Yes.
Right.
But I guess I didn't get the link between. I guess what I didn't get from what you were saying is the link between that and clip gain adjustment.
I'm about to tell you. The clip gain, what that allows you to do is you are now pre the compressor without having to route it somewhere else. So now, instead of riding the vocal with the fader and routing it to an aux and bringing it back, you can use clip gain to determine how hard the vocal hits the compressor in the first place. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. And that's what I do essentially. a lot of times I have to do click gain adjustments on punches because they don't come back with the same energy, you know, that they were at before. I'll use click gain adjustments on, again, de-essers. I just haven't found a de-esser I like yet. I'm just really old-fashioned with it. I mean, because it's like either I got to go and get into a lot of automation with the de-esser, because sometimes it's more than others, and how it's hitting the de-esser. I mean, a de-esser is really just a compressor, okay? So, you know, so the easiest thing for me to do is go through the track, you know, and do a click gain adjustment where I need it to be. It's natural, nothing's coloring it. It's just done.
Mm-hmm. I agree. To me, that's the most natural way to make S's still sound like S's, but at the right volume and relationship to the other words.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
and
it doesn't get any lisp to it. You know, it just sounds like it's supposed to without any artifact of any kind.
Yeah, I think that's the key, the relationship to the other words, because even though the S's are pretty much going to be the same volume each time, the words that they're attached to are not the same volume.
Yeah.
So even when you're manually de-essing, it's not like you get to say, oh, I'm just going to go -5 dB and I'm going to copy this to all the other S's.
It's surgery. It is surgery. But again, most of the time when we use a de-esser, we try to set it and forget it. And that's where the problem comes. Right. You know, we set the de-esser up, you know, we set it and forget it until it gets to this one S down here, and it blows my de-esser away. And it's like, if I got to automate, I may as well just, you know, just fix all the stuff and be done with it. I don't want to automate the de-esser, you know, the thresholds and the this and the that, you know, on the de-esser. I don't want to have to do that. Particularly if I got an artist where it's all, you know, sometimes, you know, you get lucky, I guess, and you just have a problem here and there. But then sometimes is you got the, you know, you get the song to mix and the recording engineer, you know, didn't address this problem while they were recording. So, and it's like they're just, the siblings is crazy. And now, you know, you got this song to mix, and Dave said, fix it before you mix it.
Dave said, what did Dave say, Dave?
Dave said,
fix it before you mix it.
What did Dave say, Dave? Unmute yourself. There you go.
Hey, what's up?
Fix it before you mix it, man.
Before you mix it.
That's right,
Yeah.
babe.
How you guys been?
Everything's good?
Tired.
All right, man.
Sorry I'm late, man. I've been on that freeway.
Oh, Jesus.
Yep. That's
Coming
what's
over
happening
the
out here in
mountain?
LA is the freeway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. What you guys talking about?
So all that de-essing and all click in and for me, before I start anything, before I pull out a plug-in or anything, I'm fixing everything that needs to be. Well, usually I have a guy that's doing it, but when I sit down, my tracks are trimmed, all those edits that need to be made are done. Everything, my groups, all my delays, reverbs, or whatever I'm using, it's all set up before I get into that creative process we call mixing.
Right.
That's just my flow.
Right.
One of the to get back to a question Vlady had before, one of the problems you're going to have with automating the way that you're talking about is you're only automating peaks with that. And especially if you're using whatever you're using, a trackpad or a mouse or whatever, you're basically chasing the mix. You're basically saying, oh, wait, this is too loud, now let me pull it down, which is too late by then. And then you're saying, oh, it's too soft, so let me push it up, and it's too late. One of the things is that the peaks aren't really reliable, which is, if you go back to the example I just gave of a background vocal which starts out loud and ducks off, and you don't want it to do that, so you're going to fade it in a way that it starts out lower and goes up higher. Similarly, that's what's happening with your lead vocal. So you can't really set it and forget it with a lead vocal, because your vocal is, depending on how much you squashed it. Like, you might have C4s on it, and you might have all these limiters on it and all this sort of stuff, RVox. So what happens is, instead of just taking that one vocal channel and riding it, you might want to leave that where it is and use the parallel track and ride that, because it's really what makes it fight against the rest of the song is the average value, or the RMS. So you want to pick that up. It's not so much of the big deal where the peaks are, but the question is where it goes once it drops off from the peak. You see what I'm saying? That's what makes things where you can't hear them, and then you're saying, oh, wait, I've got to fade this differently. So try parallel compression and also try parallel distortion.
Thanks, Bill. By the way, Dave, I wanted to ask you, I've asked the other guys on how they automate vocals because it seems a bit subjective to me. So from what I understood right up till now is like some people usually expect what's going to happen in the vocal and they duck before it happens. Or what's your process of automating vocals, Dave? If you have
you're talking about automating vocals, in what respect? Like, give me an example of what you're doing.
Like writing a fader, basically playing the song, and you have the vocal sitting roughly where you want it to be. You just want it to.
I'm a visual compression guy, so I automate the vocal by playing the song over and knowing the parts that I want to affect. And if I'm doing I do more live stuff that I have to go back and make something for or sweeten it to say, okay, this was the live concert, here's the thing. So I do a lot of visual compression where I'm putting intensity on the volume, using the volume of what's going on, and knowing that I was there when the song was recorded, and so I know the energy that was being delivered live. And I like to ride my fader. I don't really do a lot of the auto tricks that everybody does. There are some things I'll add on it if I see that it's lacking. I'll use a traditional doubler. I'll use something like a tape simulator to do a very quick double or echo effect. But for the most part, I'm not going to rely on that because I had to know so much about the song and about watching the singer perform it. I'll know if there's something that's messed up that we have to get around. That's where it gets challenging in automating the vocals, because you have to figure out, are we gonna, especially on a live thing, we just did a live concert, we had to figure out, are we losing total performances if something is messed up, or can we edit it to the point of where we've got enough song to give a performance? And it's a really hard judgment call to make, because you might have a healthy part of a live performance, but if the mess up is so bad that there's no way you can edit out of it and do it in a live performance, you've got all these other ambiances that are working against you. Even applause of the audience and all this, when you're going to try and fake the ending of a song, or try and make something last, or I'll just cut to this. It's not as easy when you have all these other elements that you have to sell the vocal with. You know what I mean? So I'm an old school visual compression guy. I kind of believe in learning the material and following it as we did back then. It sounds antiquated, and I'm not one of those guys that said, oh, I just want to be back where I started. No, for me, I'm a little intuitive because I learned that way.
Yeah.
And so it works for me. But I know for other people, they live in the land of plugin, man. They love that shit, and it's good. Both are good. I think there's a place for both of them. I did more what I'll call automated compression when I was doing things for radio or for that had some pretty stiff standards, broadcast standards, because you had to peak limit all of the things that were going on, and you could never have, even if it was talking or singing or anything, you couldn't have it go beyond a certain level, or else your whole project would get rejected.
Right.
So it was a little bit more strict back then, which is why probably I don't go to letting the machine do it all, because back then we only had like a DBX 165, right? And that was pretty much all you had, and you could set it to peak limit, or you could say, you could do a couple of tricks with it, but for the most part, you had a different standard that you had to abide by. It's very forgiving now with all the ultimate undos and the various things that you have in the land of digital wonder. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can just get a little bit more out of it, so when you do the visual compression, by knowing the song, you expect, let's say, if you were to make a dip, by knowing the song, you expect to move sort of preemptively before the actual transient hits.
Yeah, I think when I say knowing the song, which means you know the performance, which means you know the vocalist, which means you know the breath, you know the part that you're trying to get to and the part you're trying to get rid of. You know what I mean? And it goes to even some cases where we'd had to, you want the power and majesty of the voice, but maybe they took a big breath, but it was the best take they had, so you got to work between muting it and whatever else in order to get you your peak audio performance, but you don't want the and all those other artifacts that come with poor vocal, mic technique or whatever, and whatever happened.
You did that like a preacher, Dave.
What's that?
You did that like a preacher.
Well, yeah. Well, but the thing is, listen to preachers though. Preachers use that tone as a tie in music. They, how we have a tie in music. Preachers use I. They use the breath to get to the next sentence. And it connects everything together. So we joke about it now, but next time you go to church, listen to the cadence of the preacher, right?
Of
and
course.
you're gonna be watching a very skilled nightclub act, right? Because he knows how to take the audience up and down, and he's only talking. He's not singing yet, right? It's very depending upon what kind of church,
Right.
English churches.
You can learn a lot from church, man. Church audio teaches you a lot. Trust me.
I'm with Dave on that. I'm in that. I'm definitely in that boat where I like to understand the material, and so I don't auditory probably more than visual, but like if I'm sitting down to do a mix or whatever, it's like I need to know the material. Or even when I'm tracking, now with Pro Tools, you have the ability to even do some automation while you're tracking, depending on what version of Pro Tools you're on. So if I know the song, I may have a basis of automation right then because I know what they're going to do next, and I know that they're getting ready to whatever they're getting ready to do, and so I can deal with it then. But certainly music, and I know where those spots are. I'm anticipating them because I know they're there and I know they're coming.
Yeah, one thing I'll add is, especially like in my case, I mix a lot of things that are known hits. Like we do these concerts, and we'll either have the original artist who did it, or and a band of just generalized musicians who are trying to deliver their performance. So when you're doing that and you're mixing live, at least my philosophy is, I listen to the song and I listen to the unique sounds in that hit song at the different frequencies that they're happening. And what I'm trying to do is leave enough room sonically for all the markers that I know my audience demographic is going to listen for, right? So if I'm listening to an Earth, Wind, and Fire song, which is a real easy thing, I'm going to leave a lot of room for my horns to hit the notes they need to hit, so that transitionally, even if I don't have the original band, I have a chance of hitting that aha moment with my audience in my mix, because I'm like, okay, yeah, they're doing that song. They're doing it well. Consequently, if you're doing an Isley Brothers song and you don't focus on the guitar, you just say, oh, he's just a guitar player, he's going to play a lead. No, you better listen to how he's playing, where it comes in, and know that he's about to go someplace where only Ernie Isley goes. So if I can't make him sound like Ernie Isley, I'll leave that up to him to learn how he's going to handle this so he can get to that moment. So when you're kind of, as an engineer, escorting these songs, and they're known songs to the moment, you need to understand the elements that you can craft, and those are going to be those different frequencies. I kind of got that from, if we go back to Khaliq's first thing, hypnotic audio, right? There are a ton of sounds, transitional sounds in songs, or standout sounds in songs that hook you to the song. So if somebody doesn't get those points, even if you have the original artist up there, it is a sonic letdown if you don't get those characteristics in every time that you're going after it. So this doesn't go for Western music, because everybody is come from another country. So you guys have hits that are known there too, and you know good and well, if you were working with a band and they were attempting to do something that's a very popular song, if they didn't get it, and you're sitting back there, you go, no, man, you didn't get it. You need to do this, this, and this, because you can hear what's believable. So when you're going for these compression things, you know, original stuff is great, but, you know, a good test of being able to train your ears is to work with material that's previously left a mark. And it helps you at least figure out how you're going to judge who you're working with and get it together as an engineer to know, okay, he's pretty versatile there, I can go there. You know, consequently, vocally, same thing. There are some people who have a unique vocal signature. You know, what's the guy's name? Sledgehammer. You know, come on, what is his name? Has a studio.
Peter Gabriel.
Peter Gabriel. Unique vocal signature. Phil Collins. Unique vocal signature. Right. So
Al Green.
Al Green. Unique vocal signatures. So consequently, when you're mixing either those people or people who are going to sing a song in a similar thing, you want to listen to every emotion and everything that they're trying to get to in the lyric. You're going to listen to how they're timing it and where they're coming in. Some people are very affected by the previous work, so they try and mimic it verbatim. And they'll try and do all the inflections that the person has, and they'll try and do all the falsetto, and some other people put their interpretation on. They'll only hit certain areas to give you a reminiscence of what somebody did. But still, you know, vocally, try and just follow it so you can capture the best. Learn the song so that when you see different people's interpretation, you know how to say, okay, cool, that's where he's strong, that's where he's weak. And you can hear singers who, you know, there's a lot of singers when you know, your critical question value is about volume of vocals. So I'm just going to use singing as an example. But there's a lot of singers who they will not gradually move into the song and move throughout the song. They will drastically jump into a song, and they'll go there, and sometimes that's very abrupt. And so you have to then take that and go, okay, now how do I get that to meet where everybody else is in the song? Because that might be what they think is hot stuff, right? And it might not be that hot. It might just be that's what they're sure about. You'll notice that vocally people have a habit. The things they're sure about, they go to, right? The things they're not sure about, they stay away from. So when they sing a song, you might hear some people start out super low and never get out of that register because they're trying to save themselves for the big line at the end. Oh, so they have the note, right? But all throughout the song, they're just morose singing in this, you know, and you've never heard them sing like that before, you know, and it happens. I had one this last concert. The girl showed up for every day rehearsal. She had her head all wrapped up. She was, you know, showed up. She sang, you know, backgrounds, did her thing. The rehearsal before the show, she got her hair done, I guess. So she came with her hair done. Totally different body language, totally different thing. Now she's standing up, she's emoting, she's singing at least 3-4 dB hotter than she was singing before because she's looking good, right? And so I'm going like, oh man, all the stuff we did is out the window because now she's louder than everybody else, you know. And so you have to figure out a way to figure out the characteristics of all these people who are coming before you delivering these vocals, you know, and they do all have different characteristics, you know. So I hope that answers your question, Vlady. I didn't mean to
Absolutely.
go on.
Thank you so much. Khaliq, what's up?
What's up, guys? Good to see y'all. I wanted to pop in for a hot second and everything. I'm on my iPhone, so forgive the shaky video, but
he's on his iPhone. Get it?
Yeah, my iPhone. He got jokes.
Yo, I see what you did there, Dave.
Yeah, right. Gotta give it to you. That was pretty fast, man. That was pretty fast. Yeah. Man, it's just good to get in. You see, I got my big old Ray Charles glasses here. You know, do my Stevie Wonder thing. What's going on, folks? How y'all doing? I kind of came in late on the questions and discussion.
Everything's good. We were talking about vocals and automation. Any opinions on that?
Vocals and automation. Well, basically Dave hit it because we both learned a lot the same way. But the one thing I guess that I could add to the conversation of what he was saying is that we got to always remember that the tools, as far as automating them and everything, are trying to mimic what we feel, and then just take our workload and lessen it. So that's the purpose of automation. We used to do all these things. It originally started out everybody doing it by hand before compressors and things like that were invented. Then somebody said, okay, well, if I invent this box that can do that automatically, then that frees my hands up to do something else. So we keep freeing our hands up. So the danger that you have to be careful of is don't free your hands up so much where everything is going to automation and you forget about, originally it was about how did the music feel. And the only reason why they invented something to automate it is because they were trying to get to a feeling in the music, and they didn't have enough physical hands to do everything at one time. So it's not necessary to automate everything at one time if you've got the feeling. Always stay on the feeling. Remember, we did that one call with the ambassador when he went to the Mix with the Masters, and that's what that was the big theme, is that you got to go for the groove and the feel of the song before anything. Our Bruce Sweeting, who is old school and everything, but nobody can still deny that he pulled the feel out of all those records he did back in the day without relying on compression. So we just got to remember that these are just tools, and they're basically to free our hands up to do a few things. Just don't overdo it. I have nothing wrong with doing it and all that, but just keep going back to your ear and listening and going back to your heart and feeling it. If you do that, you'll always be good, Vlady.
Thanks so much, guys. This is really helpful. I was asking because I was mixing this song, and I was comparing with my reference, and the song I was mixing, the vocals were kind of popping out, then were kind of quiet, and they were never really flowing like, let's say, my reference, which was, let's say, Ed Sheeran, And I keep hearing, and I keep saying to myself that there's no compressor that's able to do so. To do such a thing to the vocal to make it flow like that. So it must be someone's hand just riding the fader. I couldn't see any other thing. But this really helps me get closer to that sound, guys. So thanks a lot.
Well, one thing too I wanted to say that I'm still a huge proponent of, before you even worry about all that, I say take the time on the front end to get what you need that's in a good controllable area, so that if you couldn't put nothing else on, it would still work good. So the reason why I say that is, for me, the biggest thing that Pro Tools did more so than anything else they did was when they included clip gain. Because I always go to that first and average out everything I need to get it as optimized as I can from a gain standpoint. It's like gain staging through a console.
Exactly.
So you gain stage your audio files as well, so that everything is optimized, and then you have to do a whole lot less. Now, if you do need to use compressors and EQ and things like that, it's always better to, at first everybody used to use one because we had physical boxes at first, so everybody was using one, and then you use them in series and all that. But right now with plugins and everything, everybody wants one thing to do a ton of work, and it's better to optimize it in front and then have each thing do a little bit of work. And if you need to put them in series that way, have each thing doing a little bit of work instead of one thing trying to magically control everything.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was saying earlier, guys, before Khaliq got on the phone. Well, not the phone, but before he got on his iPhone.
The iPhone.
That whole, gaining up and down, that whole fix it before you mix it thing. I mean, that's really, really important for me in my flow, to make sure that, I've got my tracks are set up, to hit those compressors the right way, where they're not working too hard. I don't have these big dips and highs and across my tracks, because I've taken care of that. That's part of my process before I even start. Sometimes because of the way we record today, we often record preserving a lot of that dynamic range, because we've got a noise floor that's virtually there's no noise. So we record a lot softer than we had to back in the day. So one of the things I do after my guys, before I sit down, is like, hey, I need to gain all these tracks need to be gained up to a certain point before I sit down. That's what I need, for exactly the reason that Khaliq just said. So I'm just co-signing, man. But actually, I learned that from you because back in the day when you was giving out stuff like this, whatever happened to your courses, man?
Man,
like Mixing Secrets Revealed and all those.
I still have some things in the archive. Basically, I've been doing personal coaching, and I have a little mastermind group. I'm going to start opening some things back up to the people, but I pretty much got basically an inner circle type of thing going on with different levels and everything. But I think I am going to open up it again because a lot of people have been asking me about some of that stuff, and I'm about ready to do a 2.0 version of it. It's a lot of work, man. It's a lot of work trying to get everybody going, but I think it's worth it, and plus it's good for me too. It keeps me sharp, and so I'm ready to dig back in, man. So I'll definitely let you know what's going on, man. And because I'm not going to stay on here, guys, I wanted to also mention, I wanted to do something. I'm leaving to go to New York on this weekend, but before I do, I was thinking about maybe trying to get on here and show you guys a couple of things that I've been doing behind the scenes as far as new platforms that are out here I've been working on, new technologies. I talked with Bill about it and Dave about it. I wanted to get on, maybe find a good day where we can get on and I can maybe introduce y'all in the community to some of this stuff. And then I'm working on some extensive training for it and everything like that. So would you guys be interested in attending sometime this week? Is everybody's schedule have anything open this week? And what would be a good day?
I'm cool. Probably Thursday, Friday would be good for me.
Okay, yeah, that'd probably work.
Thursday or Friday could work here.
Okay, I'm thinking about maybe shooting for a Thursday then, because I think it'll be a good day. And I'll let you guys know and start setting some stuff up, and then show you this, because this is something that's going to be really good for everybody in our community, but just in general. You guys probably know a lot about it, these streaming services and everything that are out here. And I've got some. And I've learned a lot about it, had a chance to talk to some of the CEOs and things like that about what's going around the corner, and I think we all need to really fully embrace this. I'm going to be going in and using it for some of my training I already have, in fact, and things like that as well. So it's just something good to know. So yeah, I'll shoot for maybe trying to see if I can put something together for everybody on Thursday. And Bill, what I may do is hit you up, so maybe we can do some kind of a pin post or something where we can get as many people in as we can and let them know about it.
All right, cool.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So anyway, I'm actually going to get off of here because my arm is getting tired from holding this phone up here, and I need to get back to work, guys.
All right, man.
All right. Well, y'all have a good one.
Thanks for coming through, Khaliq. Good looking out.
Thanks a lot for letting me know what's going on. Good looking out. I might have to go through this now for how long?
Hey, man.
When will it end? I got at least
We're too quick, man.
Yeah, I got at least a few weeks. All right, well, get a good look right there, right
there you
now.
go.
It's all good.
All right, man. Have a good one. Good seeing you.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dave, I wanted to ask you something. Now I was I keep asking you guys these questions, but I was thinking when you have a lot of experience, under your belt. You have a lot of work under your belt, and I was wondering if there was something you could say to your younger self right now, something that you know right now that you could say to your younger self. What I'm always trying to get these,
Wow, that's a good question, man.
I know it's a huge one, but if you can answer, please, take your time.
I'll give you one real quick. Okay. And the only reason why I got to do a graduation speech for Musicians Institute, so I've been thinking about things like this because I always talk to Bill and tell him my challenge right now when I speak to people is to emote love and passion for a business that at times is loveless and passionless, right? And so I have to look inside and go, man, what? And that the question is very similar. What could I tell myself now if I were in school? So my subject, I think I'm going to talk to them about is time, because time is probably the most precious thing we have. But the biggest thing I think for me, if I could tell myself when I was younger, is that you don't get paid when it comes to your wage. You don't get paid for the hour. You get paid for the value you bring to an hour, right? So you really got to understand who you are and what it is that you have that is worthy of whatever price you're going to put on your time. And the reason why I would tell myself, my younger self, that now is that through talking to you guys and just through living life and just everything, there are a lot of things that I went through had I had a different mindset, and Bill and I talk about this all the time because he's generationally from a different place. Had I employed some of those strategies, you know what? I might be in a different place. I might be the same, but I probably wouldn't, right? I'd probably be a little bit different. I might have had some more experiences in a different direction. Might not have been the same ones, but I definitely would have. It definitely would have been different. And it's not just Bill, just through talking to other people and learning the things I've learned from them. There's a bunch of ways that you can approach your challenges that you're going to have, But all of it is time management. All of it is time management. And it's all knowing your value, knowing what you're worth. And if you understand it, you're not going to let any conversation rock you. It's just that I think I did burn up a lot of time because I'm from an era and a time where it was intense. So did I lose time? No, I don't think I lost time. Could I have used that time and energy on something else? I probably could have. But it wouldn't be the same. Because there's no other me to pass it to say, in some cases I had to be the first. Right? In order for there to be a conversation to say, in order for Bill to say, hey man, you looked at it and done it this way, I would have had to have done it the way I did it. But I really get it, and as I look back now, as time allows you to look back, when you have a lot of years and experience under your belt, time also allows you to look back. And if you can look back and say, you know what, I see their point and I understand it now, because I'm here at a point where I can look back and say, wow, that was definitely a definitive other attitude and direction I could have taken. We can't go back and repeat anything, but I just think it's so important that it's a self-worth thing when you're an independent contractor and you're an engineer, because you could work for a company and you could get a job or whatever you do, if you don't do this full time, any job that you have is a work for hire, whether you got a contract or not. All a contract is what you might feel is a safety net. But in 2015, nobody has a safety net. Truthfully, right? So, and I don't care what country you live in. You pick something like being an audio engineer and just an independent contractor in general, and you're in orbit around the creative artistic community. You really need to know that you're not getting paid for the hour. You're getting paid for the value you bring to an hour, anywhere. So don't sucker yourself into thinking, I'm Vlady. I must be Vlady to the peak inside of a control room behind the console. Because when Vlady goes to the supermarket, you still got to be Vlady. And if somebody says, hey, ain't you Vlady from the control room? Now that's going to challenge you to what? You got to have a personality. You ain't got no mixer there. You just got to be Vlady, the cool cat somebody met in the studio. And you know what? It might get you some business. But if you don't know that and you think every time you got to be the studio cat, it's got to be the setup, and you got to have, and you think it's all behind it, man. So much of what we do has nothing whatsoever to do with sitting at the studio. It has to do with sitting with people who need companionship through creativity. That's what's going on. They need a friend, man. They need a friend. Some people need a friend to say, hey, man, let me bounce this idea. Some people need a friend just to pour them a drink and say, man, I don't know what the hell to do. Some people need a friend just to say, hey, man, just sit there while I work. But this is part of the creative community's MO, you know, and for engineers and people like us, we have to learn that. Just like I was telling you, learn the characteristics of your vocalist, you got to learn the characteristics of your client. They all have this need for accompaniment and companionship and confirmation and assurance that them trying to create their idea is going to come out okay, and the longer you work with them, you turn into valued asset, because you know what? You get them through the process. Sometimes you guys create the process together. You guys both have clients that you probably can point to where you started them out in their first thing, and now you've been with them through 5, 6, 10 records, right? Those are people who you've massaged into a way of thinking that they can't do without you. So you've already done branding and all these other fancy names everybody wants to give it in 2015. That's part of you doing branding, is when people call you back, you've already insured your brand, but that's because you understand, I need to invest in this now. I need to invest in this creative relationship, and so I don't mind doing it. And part of that goes back to, you know, how much you charge and what you're worth, and knowing that you're bringing something to that hour. And if you get into that, you won't. I've seen guys who are really talented, and I'll give them a shot to do some stuff, and they will always mess up because they're working under the pressure of I need money, right? And the pressure of I need money turns it into a transaction, and they never invest self, and they never get to look up at the other person because the whole exchange is about money. You know, and you can't do that. Even if, you know, if you're going to agree to be there, man, you agree to be there. Agree to be there and listen to the song, serve the song, and serve the people who are paying you your wage. It's the best thing will come from it, because you never know. The ones that pop are the ones that you would never think, oh, man, that song did so-and-so, but then somebody's coming back and they got an audience now, and they're 2, 3 CDs into a career, and, you know, most people would never know who they were, wouldn't care, but the bottom line is they created a process with you that works. They found an audience that likes them, and they're repeating that process. And so you can't argue with that kind of success. So, you know, if I could tell my younger self anything, it would be that you don't get paid for the hour, you get paid for the value you bring to an hour. And so you really got to know your worth. You know, I mean, there's so much I could say. I mean, I would always, you know, steer toward business, but I mean, there's so much other life stuff too. You know, look out for them, don't marry her. You know, I can say a bunch of things. You know, I can say a bunch of things, but the biggest thing is that, because those are the things that affect us, because we're trying to do something that most people will not do. This is not a career that everybody can pick and mess with without it seriously affecting how you function and how you start to, you know, relate to the world. You know, you do enough of this, and each of you understands, because you leave where you're at now after this conversation and you walk outside, and the first time you hear some music, you're not listening like a normal person listens anymore. Ever again. You're discerning the things you would do, the things you wouldn't do, the things you can hear, the artifacts you hear behind it, the bad mix, the good mix. You're hearing all these other things because of your heightened awareness. And the struggle for us is to be able to, the minute we finish a project, leave that project where it is and go back to being as basic as we were when we first entered into this. Because it's a very good place to try and park it, so that when the next client comes along who you haven't worked with, you can approach it from some form of innocence instead of a form of critiquing. You know. people send me stuff to critique all the time, and I listen to it and I go, and I have this thing where I won't go into it long. I'll just tell them, okay, I'm going to be very honest with you, and here goes. And so I don't get personality into it. I don't say, hey, I hope you're okay, and I didn't mean it the wrong way. No, I just go, that's too much of that, not enough of this. You washed the groove out, you did this. Why don't you just bust it on down to some simple stuff, you know? Or I'll say something like, hey, it's not the song is not about using every reverb in the room, you know. And you know, but just telling people things in a way where they understand what they thought was ready wasn't ready. Because they have to understand that, you know, we all got trained ears, so that we can't waste people's time. That's the time thing again, right? Time. You know, so you want to be able to tell, if somebody asks you, no, it's not quite there, and here's why, you know, and you've all heard it, you know, people who start mixing, you know, they get delay happy and reverb happy, but they never forget to look at the chart, right? The delay charts and those numbers were made for a reason, you know. God made decay for a reason, so you could calculate it. And so a lot of people are not really understanding of why the delay charts exist, and they're your friend if you use them. They're your friend. But we get a lot of things where people are just, you know, trying to do like Luke and fly by the forest, and you can't always do that. You can't always do that. You have to have some sense of what you're doing, where you're going, and how you use the tools and how you arrive at something. And again, it's a time thing. You know, you got to be considerate of time. Just like earlier, you guys were talking about preparing the tracks. You know, I came in halfway, but you know, you don't start one thing before you've done this other stuff, because then the process you're working to finish. That makes sense, to work to finish, but not to work to keep working. You know. That's kind of, you know, ass backwards. So, you know, I think if I could do anything though, that's what I'd tell myself. You know, there's always the side of me that is serious about the business, which, you know, I guess we got to be after 50 odd years. But there's a side of me that just wants to have fun sometimes. Sometimes, man, I just want to check into a hotel and not worry about anything and not worry about anybody else's problems except mine. And sometimes I don't want to deal with audio. Sometimes I just want to sit by the pool and you know, watch the waves, man. I don't want to. It's a lot, you know, when you spend a lot of years, man. I don't need to go to concerts. I had somebody invite me to go to Lenny Kravitz the other night. I would have loved to gone, but I'm like, do I want to get on the freeway? I don't want to get on the freeway. I don't want to go to the Greek. I done seen Lenny before. Nah, I don't want to go. You know, but and you know, I don't know. Maybe we're jaded. I don't know. But we dedicate a lot of time to it, man. So we got to really give ourselves some distance to have a life and have that component work. And then, you know, like Khaliq was alluding to earlier, we got to take care of our health, man. You know, we are all not spring chickens. So there's a big thing that we have to do in order to get our health thing together. So I'll be glad when this year's over, because everybody around, we're all going through health challenges, and that's a big concern, because, you know, it's like this job is sitting in front of a monitor. You know, it's not aerobics. You know, ain't nobody invented mixed aerobics yet. You know, we'll probably have some crazy motherfucker with a chair spinning, trying to mix with a pair of faders. Probably be Bill, you know, with his spinning clothes on, and his, you know, he'll have a girl on the right side and a girl on the left side, and he'll have a Euphonics universal control faders on his steering wheel, and he'll be pedaling his bicycle at 90 miles an hour with the girls serving him sports drinks, and he's mixing a tune. He'll probably be the one who merges it all, man.
Hey, that sounds good to me. I can get down with that.
Exactly, except, excuse me, it wouldn't be a smoothie, it would be a Foster's. Yeah. Yeah, or Mickey's Big Mouth, right? Yeah.
Thanks so much, Dave. You know, that's really valuable information. You know.
I know it was a long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, it's absolutely cool, because, you know, every once in a while, I ask you guys these questions, and they're kind of, the long ones because they involve principles. I dig, compressors and EQs and mixing and all that, but it's one thing to learn techniques, and it's another thing to learn principles, and that's why I really think that type of information is really valuable that you just shared.
I'm gonna give y'all one last one, and then I'm gonna shut up. This is a book that I'm reading. Okay, anybody see it? The Life-Changing Art and Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. It's a real good book, and it's really cool. She's an organizational person, and through the story of teaching about her system of teaching people how to organize and straighten up their lives and the surroundings around them, it has some real good principles in there. One of the principles into uncluttering is to just put your stuff all out, and as you pick up each piece, ask yourself, does this thing bring me joy? Right? If it don't bring you joy, get out, get rid of it. Right? And all of us gather a lot. I mean, if I shine this camera around here, you can see so much equipment on this studio. It's crazy, and I have to constantly get rid of it because it's just a thing. And I'm looking at Rodger's place, and all behind him, I'm seeing the music store, right?
It's junk. No, that's the junk.
You got so many magnetic fields around.
Sam Ash.
The real stuff is right here.
Yeah.
That's the junk back there.
Exactly. So it was hard at first for me to get rid of equipment because personally I'd invested so much into owning. I came from not having, so having was a big thing to me. But as I got older, I realized ownership comes with using up space, and I don't want to use up space. And I have more gear than the law allowed, and I'm not writing songs. I just had it as a byproduct of working with people, and so I found that if I had it, it made it easier for me to work, so I would just get it, but I wasn't a full user. I'm just using it on the one end to make what I do more accessible. So consequently, I had all this stuff sitting around, and it gathers very quickly because people would give me gear and, hey, you want this? Hey, you want this? And as soon as I throw something away, guaranteed somebody will give me 5 more pieces, right? I got a garage right now full of stuff, and I've been doing this thing of organizing. But there's a great book, and you should read it. It has some very good life analogies, things that are in it that are helpful, because at this point, I'm trying to always trim down only to what's needed, to where I'm using just what I have here and interfacing with the world. I mean, that's the challenge. We can use our stuff that's in front of us. And I got a system here, and I got a portable system and all that, but more often than not, I'm trying to use what I have in my head, right? Because that's what's got me this far. It's not a head app. It's not a, it's just, as we get older, you want to keep firing it off. And if I got to go, hey, yo, I got a box that does that. I got boxes here that are brand new that I haven't even used.
Spread the love, man.
And so but they're boxes that are so wacky. Most people go, well, why does he have that? I don't know, because I like wacky things that don't do what everybody else would want to do. But at some point in time, I think, man, I'm gonna need that one day, And everybody's like that. You got a drawer full of wacky stuff. You got, all these kind of adapters and stuff. Everybody has that. But yeah, trimming down. That book is very good, and it's got some good lessons in it. So I would suggest to anybody, read some books, man, away from music. Just read some books that don't have shit to do with music, because you need to. Because when you run into people who are artistic, you got to be able to relate to them with some other concepts. Sometimes people who are artistic are very myopic, right? Everybody understand what that means? They're very single-minded. So they only live in the world of their focus and their mind and their songs. And sometimes if they're going to be around you and you're responsible for the creative window, it helps if you have a mind that's stimulated from knowing what's happening all around the world, from being fully unaware of what's happening here, there, and where they're from and where you're from, and you know what the motivation is to do the tune, or what the anything. If you know something about poetry, the classics, anything that helps you to increase your ability to relate to someone's art in another way, I think is good. So just be about learning that. I mean, if you don't do anything but get books, I was into Frank Lloyd Wright houses because I like the lines and I like his architecture, right? So, I had a lot of books on Frank Lloyd Wright, because doing studios, yeah, I like it. Am I trying to be Frank Lloyd Wright? No, but I just can appreciate where he's coming from with how he solves some problems, right? And some people are into Tesla, some people are, people into everything, but get yourself some things that you can do that give you fulfillment in that area, and it will bring fulfillment to your other area. You'll find yourself bumping into concepts that'll help you in your music and in your relating to your clients. I know I find it all the time.
There is one good book that's kind of musical related that I really like.
Which one?
This one.
Oh, you got that one. Wow, that's wow, that's the original.
You even had more hair then, Dave.
Hold it up again, Rodger. It switches.
I don't even think I was on the cover. That's funny that you have that show the cover.
There it goes.
Yeah, I did have more hair, man. I was a lot younger then. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one of the first times. You may not remember this. It's been several years ago, back when I first met Khaliq virtually, and then I met you guys and talked at NAMM and whatever a few times. Mm-hmm. But I remember I said, man, I want you guys to check out one of...
What happened? You froze up.
You said I would ask if I could send a mix so you guys could listen to it. You said, no, play it over the phone. Let me hear it over the phone.
Yeah, because I listen to stuff over the phone all the time.
Yeah,
I mean, because the thing is, if your mix is good, I'm going to hear it. I mean,
exactly.
And some people don't believe that, but I've heard a lot of mixes, man, and sometimes people have some banging mixes over the phone. So
yeah,
we got to remember we didn't have phone technology when I started. So anytime somebody say, I'm going to send you a mix, they literally come by with some tapes, and you'd have to sit there as they rifled all through them.
But I do people like that now. I do to this day. Hey, let me hear it. Play it over the phone right now. I can tell you. If it ain't right, I can tell you now. No need to Dropbox it, hightail it, and just play it.
That's funny that you should say that. I just had the guy who's mixing the live show. He sends me after they edit out or cut somebody from the show. He sends me the Dropbox file to listen to. And lately, I've just been listening to the Dropbox file on my computer. Sometimes I would hook it up and just let it play and then listen. But lately, I listen to the edits on my computer. And if I can buy it coming from my computer speakers that I like the order of the show. Now, I'm not fine-tuned listening. I'm listening to the new order that they made a live show into. I'm listening to the audience applause. I'm listening to how they seamlessly sewed things together that weren't together, right? And so I kind of do what I call rough listening, and I'll use something like a crude device like a laptop, and I'll monitor through the laptop just because I feel like that lo-fi audio experience is good enough for me to make a blanket assessment that I couldn't tell that it was put out of sequence. Now, I'm sure we could put it up on the screen and analyze it and see all the little clicks and pops, but I'm just talking about for a general smudge. If you're a painter, you can smudge a line and create a blend of things, right? And this same kind of thing, if you got the lo-fi monitoring device, there's nothing wrong with using that as one of your zero references for is it passable, right? And that's kind of another crude thing that's come from kind of developing before the time of Pro Tools, is knowing how to use and Bill and I were talking about this the other day, knowing how to use the point of distortion, right? There's a point of distortion when you're monitoring where you turn it up and go, oh man, that's terrible, right? and everybody used to use that point as the entree point into, okay, I'm right there, okay, that's the spot, you know. Okay, I'm right there, and that's the spot. And every time they make an adjustment, they go right there, and then they go back. They go right there, and then they go back. And that's how they would find that particular place where they had as much dynamics as possible before they would distort. But it's just, you know, it's such a relative term now with the accentuated low end and the new things we've gotten to in some of the music, that you have to figure out your own set of tools beyond just the specs of the gear you're working on. So you could sit up here and say, well, I monitor only on folk house, and folk house range is from this to this, and I got the best, you know, or whoever. I mean, if you got folk house, I'm not trying to say that, but I'm just trying to say whatever it is.
Why are you flexing me, Dave?
I'm not flexing you. No, I'm looking at M audios behind you.
I'm kidding.
Folk
I'm
audio is
kidding.
M audio. I monitor only on. But you understand what I'm saying.
I'm kidding.
There are people who live in the world of spec, and so they assume that all that happens inside that spec is gold, when in fact that whole smudgy line of distortion is an actual Geiger counter or meter to a successful place as well. It's just that some people know how to use that, and other people want to live in spec city. You know, you're not going to spec a hit into creation. You know, you're gonna figure out a way to mix something into creation, and so I like smudging and using rough edges sometimes as a marker of passage, rather than putting everything under a fine tooth comb litmus test during stage 1, 2, 3, right? Because you're in something like a live show, you're still editing. If any of you guys have ever done a DVD, you know that in a DVD, you're restricted to a certain amount of time with all your material. So during the course of putting together a DVD, aside from how many tunes you're going to have, you've got a time limit on how much extra stuff you can do. So whether or not you think something is cool, everything that happens is an additive part or subtractive part of this greater formula called how much time do I have, right? That's something that people don't talk about when they say, oh yeah, I'm doing mixing project, it's just going to DVD. You know, if you're just doing audio, cool. But if you're doing the whole thing, you've got to seamlessly make sure every element goes together. Not only the songs and the run of the thing, but in the special section where they're going to have music and accompaniment, or they're going to take a partial version and turn it into a full version that you can hear. Or they're going to turn it into, like in this case, they took footage from rehearsal. So now sonically, you want to try and match a rehearsal ambient hall with the thing that you're doing to give it some amount of parity, because you're rehearsing in the same place where the show was shot. So you want to give it some drama and some impact. So all these things weigh in on how you're going to use your tools, and that's why I say sometimes using what I'll call the smudge technique, or using that point of distortion is not a bad thing to do. It's not a bad thing to do. It's not a bad test of things. You know, I think also, like we were talking about earlier, we do get a lot of things where volumes are all over the place, and yeah, you do want to gain stage and make sure all your stuff is volume consistent. But moreover, you want to be able to make sure it's all passable on the the distortion part. You know, and some people live by it. Like I said, some people, they really choke the hell out of great music, living in this world of being right. You know, they'd much rather be right than sound good. You know, and we've all heard music like that. Oh man, it sounds great. It sounds great. Yeah. And look at my meters. You know.
And then on the other side of that, if you're not distorting the meters, going back to something that I was telling Vlady before about automation and volume levels, if you're listening at very low levels, if you can go low enough, you're only going to start hearing the peaks of the loudest things in the track.
Yeah.
Everything else disappears.
Yep.
So what happens is, if you, let's say you have your kick and snare set up where you're just barely hearing pip pip from the kick and the snare, right? And then you put your vocal in, and you can hear your vocal. If you do that, then you're going to be able to hear the fluctuations in volume level.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something where, you know, as we were talking about automation, you're going to start chasing that around. Like, oh, it's too loud, let me pull it down, blah, blah, blah. But then the other thing is that might be a situation where you say, okay, let me not let it have that much variety to begin with. Let me figure out what I want to do with compressors and limiters or clip gain or whatever I want to do, where I can listen to this whole track at a really low level, and the volume of the vocal stays in the pocket the whole time.
Right. Right.
There was this interesting situation when I asked a friend of mine to critique a couple of my mixes, and I showed him a track that was done with automation and everything, and a track that was done but without any automation. And he told me, "Oh, well, this track where you have done all the automation, it sounds kind of flat, and the other one has more life to it. So get more of the life and less of that other thing." So that also happened. I didn't know what was happening because I was so busy, you know, just thinking about the whole mixing side of it, and that's like another way things can turn around, where, you know, you've done all of this automation and you think you've brought life to it, and then someone else hears it with a good ear and he said, "Whoa, this sounds kind of flat, dude."
Yeah.
But that all depends on what you were trying to do with your automation, which is what I was talking about before with the background vocals. If you have let's say you have a level, for some odd reason, main vocal, and then you have a doubled vocal which is going louder in the front and then softer in the back, you can fade it on your own to make it softer in the front and louder in the back, or whatever expression that you want. But if you, whether you use faders or compressors or whatever, if you just make it flat like this, then you might be able to say to yourself, yeah, I can hear this the whole way through. But then somebody's going to say, well, yeah, all the dynamics were taken out of it.
Yeah, it's not real. It's not a real representation.
Yeah.
Because no one, I mean, that's, you know, we naturally have dynamics in everything we do. When we sing, when we talk, when we play an instrument, there's dynamics. And when you eliminate all dynamics from it, that's when it's just really unnatural sounding. That's probably kind of what your friend was saying. It's just really weird and unnatural.
Yeah. And that's why when you reference in such a way where you're listening to the other frequencies that are affected. You know, remember that chart that Rodger held up. You know, you're whatever you do in one area affects something in another area of perception. So if you make room for something that you're hearing over here, remember, once you're making that room, something else is going to happen possibly somewhere else to compensate for that factor, or that you're going to create a hole somewhere else. So it's like a puzzle. You're fine lining it, just trying to make sure, okay, let me adjust this. Now let me check here. Let me check here, which is why you have different monitoring perspectives. You know, different monitoring perspectives give you a different focus for your judgmental attention. You can't always, and that's why the latest thing that we have, like I said, depending upon the genre, you have a lot of people in hip hop and other music like that. They'll monitor on Mackie PA speakers, right? So you go in the mains in the studios, Mackie PA, and it's turned up, bang, 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 bang. They're making all their judgments on Mackie PA speakers. Mm-hmm. And so when you get the track, and Rodger's back and he's trying to work with the track, when he puts it in his laboratory, which is a little bit more accurately assembled, okay? And you start listening to these masterful sections, as they would tell you,
right?
You're going to hear this collision of audio elements where even the best shit is not even, they don't even hear, sometimes they don't even hear the really cool stuff that's inside of what they're doing, because they've smacked it all together and put it through this loud amplified sand process of boom, 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 boom. And then, oh, I need more low end, I need more of this, I got to feel the ooh, and not realizing it's a subtractive experience. Less is more. Move the air. You know, let the sound work itself out, and it's going to be okay. But they want to do it all themselves, and it's not giving any room for the physics to take over. You got to leave room for the physics and the math of sound projection to work. If you don't leave any room for that, you're not going to do it all, because you're not you're not sending your discernment on every note that goes out. You gotta let what it's gonna do. You know.
You know what you're saying, Dave, is kind of like, you know, if I can piggyback on that. A lot of times, you know, I understand that music is all about the feel and how it sounds and use your ears, but I think sometimes we don't give enough credence or emphasis to, you know, there is a technical side of music that you really need to kind of understand, you know, like you were talking about, you know, delay charts and reverb charts and things of that nature. I mean, there's just a certain amount of technical information that, you know, that to me, you know, understanding how this stuff works allows you to be as creative as you need to be, because you're operating within a certain law, if I can say it that way. And of course there are things that you can do outside of that creatively if that's what you're going for. But all this gear and all this stuff was kind of designed to be used kind of a certain way.
It gets you in the ballpark. The thing is, the gear gets you in the ballpark.
Exactly.
It's still up to your judgment to do the thing, but like I said, I really think that and this is just I think what we're seeing is a byproduct of the mass hysteria that Pro Tools created. The Pro Tools environment created this hysteria where a lot of people went to school and they learned Pro Tools and has made the assumption they were learning about audio. And you were not learning about audio, you were learning about a very strategically built sampling unit, right?
Right.
That's about it. Pro Tools is but a screwdriver in a big garage called audio.
Right. Morris Mingo is on the line now, and we were talking earlier, and I was like, it's amazing to me. It's literally amazing to me how many people that are in this industry, recording engineers, mix engineers, what have you, that don't know really how to use a compressor. I mean, they really don't know.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And, you know, so there's just certain things that it's like you know there's a certain fundamental, I guess, if I can say it that way, that I just feel like that should be a baseline, a bedrock.
Yeah, I used to feel like that too, Roger. The hardest part was that we let the monkey out of the bag, man. You know, and so we can never go back and undo what we all did when we said okay to the first digitizing of sound.
Yeah, I was talking to Morris earlier, and I get mixes from Grammy award-winning mix engineers. I get to do mastering work. Like, I don't know if you know, like John Yash, as an example. He's in gospel music. He's the man. You know, he's just the man. And Morris and I were talking earlier, and I said, you know, his setup, if you saw his setup, you'd be shocked, you know, because it's very simple. He doesn't have a whole bunch of, you know, he got an old office desk, not like a desk like an Argosy or nothing like that. He's got an old office desk, an iMac and his tools, and this man's got probably 6, 7, 8 Grammys, you know, and it's very simple, but he's very creative, and he, you know, thinks outside the box to do what he does. But what he does is he really understands how to use his tools. He understands it. And so he can do, you know, something I was saying, you know, a couple sessions ago. It's like, okay, if you're a basketball player, play basketball. You're not going to complain about the ball and the rim and all the court. And if you're a sound guy, if you're a front of house guy or a live sound guy, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, of course you can do better with better. But at the end of the day, you understand what you need to do as a sound guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's. I wish we did have a mandatory thing sometimes where everybody would have to know how to do certain things. But it would, you know, at the same time I say that, I have to say, yeah, I couldn't be like that because back in the day it was rougher than that.
Yeah. Well,
So I want to be the same. I don't want to be the same tyrant that birthed me, right?
the only flip side, and I agree with you, but I guess the thing for me is like, hey Dave, if you bake a cake and that cake's really really good, and I say, hey man, you know, how much can I pay you, man, to bake me that cake? If you can't bake me the cake and it tastes the same way it did last time, you suck.
Right.
That's really what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's a certain fundamental to you baking that cake that's going to be repeated. You know, you might use a little extra or something, but the fundamental of what you're doing is like, hey, it's a good cake.
Yeah.
This time I put a little extra vanilla in it because, you know, I know you like vanilla. You know, but at the core of what it is what it is, and I think that's kind of what's missing to me. And maybe it's because I'm a little older than the average guy too. You know, but the way I've learned is like, okay, now it's sort of like I wish I had learned how to, and I don't know how to play the piano, but I could play a little bit. But I wish I had started off with the theory in some way, so that now, you know, now that I really understand the piano, I can be as creative as I want to be, as opposed to now Morris plays. He's very accomplished, but you know, I don't know. To me, I'm glad I kind of learned the fundamental how to use this gear first.
I used to always feel like that because I'd be around these people who were virtuosos, right? And I'm going like, man, I don't know how to play. And people would always ask me, oh, do you play? And I'm like, no, I don't play none. I'm just an engineer, you know. And I started going like, wow. But because I'm just an engineer, I listen harder. And because I'm just an engineer, I listen with an engineer's ear. I don't listen with I want to play keyboards like Herbie because I worked for Herbie 12 years ear, right?
Right.
So if I play with if I listen with a jealous ear, that's not good for my engineering.
Right, right.
So I'm glad I don't play because I don't want to be the person I work for. So there are some good things that come from not necessarily possessing those skills. I was forced to learn music because that was what was mandatory back in the day, and so I had to learn how to sight read, and I had to learn keyboard and guitar and things like that. But and it becomes invaluable. But I knew audibly I'm not necessarily going to sit up here and write songs. That's not my forte. But it helped me. If I could say where did it help? It helped me recognize when music comes into the room.
Yeah.
I can listen to two people who I've never worked with and learn them in a matter of minutes. Learn who's the weaker, who's the stronger, who's the leader, who's the follower, and where their groove is together and what's going on. It causes you to be a better listener when you don't necessarily possess this thing that the other people in the room possess. Consequently, because they possess that and they're in the creative zone and they're pulling notes from out the air, they're also checking with you to go, how does that sound?
Yeah.
Right?
And then I'm going to say, I'm not the producer. I just push this record button.
But you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I got you.
It works in consort. And so I think we all have that moment where we wish, damn, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
But you know, but then you don't need to. I mean, it's shit. If I had a little bit of skill of everybody I work with, I'd be a terror, man.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'd be a terror.
And you got it. You just ain't telling nobody, Dave.
Well, I got it here because I can recognize it, and I know how to feed it. You know, I call it feeding the dragon, right? So if you're going to work with somebody who's high caliber, you got to learn how to feed the dragon. Well, you don't get dragon food from the market, right?
Right.
You got to get special food for a dragon. It's like a unicorn. You can't get that shit everywhere, and you got to learn how to feed them at the right time so they can do dragon shit really good. and so that's kind of the thing you learn and sharpen yourself with is, okay, I got to learn this dragon here, and this is what they do, and this is how they do it. Now they're coming to their dragon moment. Here it comes, bam. And if you can do that and feed that dragon, then that's the most successful thing you can do. And it doesn't just mean live. It means in the studio. It means anytime that they're feeling musical. It's a unsaid thing where you can feed them what they need to be creative without anybody else.
Exactly.
And that's, in this day and age, something that's really needed still. Because when talented people want to just work with their talent, everybody goes away. The lawyer goes away. The girlfriend goes away. The hangers-on go away. And they need people around who are just consistent. And that's what we are. When we turn, like I said, they'll turn to you. And no, they're not saying, hey, yeah, come on, Rodger, pick up an axe. Let's jam. No. They're going, Rodger, how does it sound, man? and that's what they're looking to you for that high-priced insurance that said, that's okay, Rodger's listening. He'll know what's up.
And exactly to your point. I mean, you know, I was talking to, again, Morris earlier, and it's like, hey, I can make every musician knows what his instrument sounds like.
Yeah.
And when I play back what my musicians just recorded, and it sounds like their instrument or their mix.
Yeah.
Their mix is so important. Their mix sounds like their instrument. They're happy. When I press play, it's like, man, you got my instrument. It sounds exactly like
me.
My instrument sounds.
Yeah.
They're happy.
Yeah. And that's I think that's overall our goal that we're charged with. I think and it's a very simple charge. It's not complicated, but you know, I think many times it's lost because of what you just said. Many people want to. There's nothing wrong with wanting to play. I think it just has its place. I really believe it has its place, and as a learning tool, it's good. But I've often seen people who want to play really come to a point where they're saturated and they can't do any more because their desire to want to be something overpowers their ability to serve.
Right. Yeah, and you know, for me, it's just a bucket. I guess it's kind of a bucket list thing, but
yeah. And I we all wish we could do that. You know, I wish. I wish
fundamentals. You know, fundamentals of theory that helped me along the way, because there's certain tools that you use that, you know, there's certain basic fundamental music things that if you understand them, then you know how to use the tool a little better, because you're starting to see things, you know, time signatures and, you know, blah blah blah, that if you don't understand some basic fundamentals, it's kind of you're kind of experimenting instead of knowing like the charts as an example, you know. So that's all I was saying. So Morris, what's that on? He left.
Yeah, he looks like he was hanging out.
Chump. He probably got dropped by that Sprint line he got. No, I'm just kidding.
You know, guys, I was thinking what you're saying there, I really resonate with that. You know, I think that ignorance is one of the biggest problems a person, especially in our industry, can have, because, you know, I've been talking to you guys for a while. You know, Rodger, we know each other. We've seen each other one time previously, but, you know, I've been in hangouts with Bill and Dave for a while, and I've noticed how about some things, it's really hard when you don't know that you don't know.
That's just it. None of us knows. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah. That's called, Vlady, that's called being intelligently ignorant. Okay? I'm intelligently, I don't know what I can't do, right?
Yeah, it's just one of those things, you know. When I first met you guys, I had absolutely no idea what's up. So the first thing I learned was to keep my mouth shut and listen. And in that process, like now, like tonight, every time I learned something new, and every time, most often, I learn that I don't know about something that, you know, that funny thing that I said. You know, I realized that I don't know about something, and I think that, you know, that little bit, you know, that people probably, you know, no one can learn everything in this world, but you could probably know that you don't know about some things, you know. Let's say we're you guys are engineers, so you know what you can do and you know what you can't do. And this can help you in a lot of situations, but some people kind of miss out on that fact that they know that they don't know that they can't do something, and when they try to do it, they fail, and they feel kind of bad about it. But yeah, I really resonate with this.
Well, but that's what you're saying is correct and it's important. It's you can head that off at the pass by recognizing ahead of time that there are things that you don't know and that you don't know what you don't know, right? So what that means is that hastens your reaction when there's something that you don't know, right? Because there are some people that when they run into something that they don't know, they say, oh, I know that, but what they know is wrong. And it takes them longer to come around to the right decision and the right understanding of what they just heard, right? So, like, for instance, I watched that, like the first JJP episode on Pensado's Place. I watched that either 5 or 6 times before I understood completely what he was saying about compression. And partially the reason why I couldn't understand it is because I had been using stock plugins during probably the first 3 or 4 times that I watched that episode. And whatever my plugins were doing was not matching up to what he was talking about. And then once I got the UAD stuff and they had different characters and all that, then I was like, okay, I understand this now. Or I understand when Brower talks about there's a sweet spot on a compressor and you can go too far in and everything gets squashed, and you don't go in far enough and everything's too loose. So there's a spot where everything is right where you need it. I didn't know that I didn't know that, but my mind was open to try to detect things that I didn't know, which makes you react more quickly. And I think that's really the best you can hope for in those situations, that once you run into something you don't know, you say, hey, like Rodger was talking about de-essing. All the de-essers sound totally different. They do totally different things. The Massey sounds different from the IK, sounds different from the Waves. The Waves has 2 of them. They have a regular de-esser. They have the R de-esser. Sounds different from the Sonox. Sounds different from the Fab Filter. They all sound completely different. So the question is this going to work on my track or not? And is it worth the time to mess with this, or should I just manually de-ess it because I know that works for me every single time?
Yeah. Yes.
What's happening, Morris? Morris go away again?
No, he's there. I don't know if he's driving or not, but he's there.
Come on, Morris. Unmute yourself, man.
Was he driving or was he?
Yeah, I was. Hey, man, trust me, I'm just dealing with one of my clients. I had to take somebody somewhere, man. My bad. How's everybody doing, though?
All right.
Things
What
good,
are you
man.
on witness? You in witness protection, man?
Witness protection, yeah. They got him out in Arizona.
Well, man, I'm technically can't even reveal the state due to specific life-threatening reasons.
There you go. There you go.
But so what you guys got going on? I was hearing, I think I heard Dave talking about. I think I heard a little bit of the Pro Tools part. It was something that he said I wanted to say something if it's okay. When they started that, and I think at the time, I was really young getting into it then, but I think it was Sound Tools at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this computer program called Tracks or MIDI Tracks Pro and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That was like that, kind of early 90s type of stuff, late 80s and early 90s when it was just starting. But, the thing about, I think the Pro Tools is I think it kind of made everybody feel like they were an engineer. You know what I'm saying? If they knew how to use that, then they just felt like that they were audio engineer. I was just blessed and fortunate to get to be around a lot of people that, are and were engineers. So it kind of it kind of helped me to learn a lot better, and it helped me to learn without a whole bunch of toys. You know, because I think the thing, when me and Roger and I were talking earlier about people having a bunch of stuff, and a lot of times they don't even know how to use them. And, you know, and I think that I wish, you know, like I've tried so much to learn from a lot of people. You know, Roger tell you, like, I'm that guy I'm like, hey man, how much would it cost for me to come and hang out and just and be the roadie and buy all the food and clean up the place for the day, just so I can learn how to do some stuff, you know, because I just felt like besides reading the books and, you know, getting all the different books I can get and just working on stuff and time after time and spending hours and hours on stuff, it's just one of those things that takes time to learn, you know. And I think I heard him mention John Yash, and I was telling him, I told him when I first went to Yash's studio in Nashville, I'm thinking, now I know this guy's mixing on SSL consoles and Neve consoles, so I'm like, you know, I'm thinking I'm gonna go into his house and I'm gonna see this big console, man. Like, I walked into this guy's house, man, and it's like his family room. There's no acoustic treatment on the wall. You know, he's got like a basic computer desk, a quad-core iMac, you know, Atom A7 monitors, the sub, and he's mixing Grammy-winning records in the box. Like, and like the top guy, I mean, that's doing this stuff as far as dealing with the gospel stuff. And I mean, he's from Detroit, but he did a lot of early Bootsy Collins stuff, a lot of early George Clinton stuff as well, tons of people. But this guy's like mixing these records without, you know, he's not going through all these, you know, all these crazy steps, going through outboard gear and all that, and he mixing great records at home on an iMac.
And what does that make you think about everybody who gets on the shows and gets on all these things and says, I do this and I do that and I do? What does that make you really think of that information?
Well, see, I think that the information is subjective, and for me, I feel like I'll tell you what I think will be the best information. The best information for me is for people to learn fundamentals. I was talking. Do you know? You familiar with this guy named out of Atlanta? And his name is Alvin Spikes.
Yeah, I know Alvin.
Okay.
He's a good engineer.
Yeah, he's a great engineer, man. And Alvin also ain't gonna teach you a whole lot of nothing. He's not on that. But he told me one time.
Yeah.
We were talking on the phone, man. He made this statement, and this has stuck with me for some years. He said somebody can teach you how to do a whole bunch of stuff, because they had this series I had bought called Mix It Like a Record. And that was, I think, what was the guy's name that I can't remember his name.
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, but it was the Mix It Like a Record. And so the guy who came up with that concept, he was having Alvin Spice was going to do another series of that.
That's Charles Dye.
Charles Dye. Yeah, Charles Dye. So I was talking to Alvin on the phone. He said, man, people can teach you anything they want to teach you. He said, but they can't teach you how to hear. And he said, when you're dealing with music, if you don't know what you're listening for and know what you're supposed to be hearing and how to hear it, all that other stuff is irrelevant.
Exactly.
And he said, man, I had to get to the point where I memorized every polar pattern of every microphone that's available when I'm recording, what to pick. I can EQ just by picking a certain microphone, you know, while I'm tracking. And it was like that kind of stuff. You know, so I think sometimes, man, part of that is the interest. You know, I have a whole bunch of plugins. I mean, and the majority of the stuff I got it free. But, you know, I believe in trying to do stuff for the people that give me stuff too. You know, I don't want to just get stuff from them. But the other thing is, I feel like not enough people are addressing the fundamental stuff that people need to know. Yeah. And the other thing is, there are not many environments where you can learn that as well. Right. You know, like all the people that I learned from, man, when I was young, going and playing out, you know, going sneaking to hear these bands and going to play with these guys, and they were, this guy Al Wilkerson, he was doing stuff for Stephanie Mills, Ashford and Simpson at the time, doing a lot of producing and writing and things with them on a lot of their records. And he would take me to the studio, and I could just go over and see everything that was happening. You know, and he knew what he was doing when he was tracking certain things, why he was doing certain things. But I think it's so much emphasis put on the gear now. It's like it's so much stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like, and it's hard to kind of like, well, I think the older you get, the easier it is not to get caught up in, oh my God, I gotta have this, I gotta have this, I gotta get that. That's gonna make that's gonna take my mixes to the next level. You know, if I have this, I'm like, no. I mean, if you know how to mix, you're just gonna get better with time, and you're gonna get better as long as you're doing the right stuff. You know how to do it right, and then, I mean, some stuff you just takes time, man, and without that time to season in it, you know, I just don't think you can. There's no quick fix to it. Even with plugins, I was to tell Rodger earlier, you know, I have like certain plugins that might have artist presets, right? And those presets don't work for everything. It could be a preset for bass, but they use that preset for something that was at a certain level on the track. It had a certain tone to it. Yeah. You know what I mean? The dynamic range was a certain dynamic range of whatever that was. You'll never know what that was. So you still got to use your ears to determine, you know, what's the good spot for that to be set for your source material.
Yeah.
You know, but the other thing is, every opportunity I get, and me and Rodger we're in competition with this. And he's older than me, so of course a lot of the stuff he's gonna beat me on because he's older, and then he has more time, you know, with Social Security coming through and everything.
Amen. If you don't stop calling Rodger old, man, I'm gonna get a pat to come rip you down.
Hey man, that's my brother, man. I love that dude.
If Rodger's old, then I'm prehistoric.
Hey, Dave, we already covered this. What are you? How old are you, Dave? If you don't mind me asking.
55.
Okay.
Oh yeah, well
I'm 51. You 55.
I respect you more than Rodger just because you're older than him. Then.
Well, we're both gonna run you down.
Right. We both gonna hit you with our
head. But yeah, you know, I try to, you know, I'm always just trying to figure out even the basic fundamental stuff. I'm like, man, like I'm sitting here messing with this, and you know, I got plugins that will fix phase, but I'll still sit there and like, hey, no, I want to actually go through this and hear when I hear more bass between two microphones that recorded the same thing, like overheads or the snare top and bottom, or you know, the snare and the kick. I want to mess with it and mess with the phase myself so I can hear the difference. And then when I hear that, you know, the heavier bass coming in, it's like, okay, cool. Now I got, okay, now it's in phase. You know what I mean? It's like, but we don't have a lot of people, and there's not a lot of places that you can go to, you know, where people know that now. You know,
and that's kind of what I was saying earlier when I referred to kind of understanding those certain fundamental things, because like some people think, okay, just mic the drum kit. Well, a drum speaks in a very particular place, individually as a drum, and so if you're trying to, you know, catch the character of that drum, you got to know where the drum speaks, and you have to know how to properly mic the drum. Something Khaliq used to always say. He drilled this into me some years ago. He called it acoustic EQ, and I live by that principle. You know, so I want to record it the way I want it to sound to begin with. You know, so those techniques that, you know, people have been in this business for a long time, like a John Yash or a Dave Hampton or a Khaliq. There's that stuff that you don't learn in a book. There's a dynamic of what we do and that's that experience again where if you know how to mix, if you know front of house, it doesn't matter what console you get on. You know,
you're gonna know what to do.
It would have been something decent.
Yeah, well, what you have.
Yeah, one other thing I'll tell you is that Alvin Spice, you know, in particular, Alvin's from the Atlanta area, and so just for people who don't know and watch this later, Alvin's responsible for a lot of the stuff you hear on TLC. So when you hear a lot of those things that Dallas Austin did, you look at those records and you see, recorded mixed by Alvin Spice. Understand that when a recording engineer understands the very concept of picking a microphone and knows polar patterns, he is going to capture a greater vocal and have more ability to do something with it. So when you see the TLC story, you don't see anything talking about Alvin Spice, do you? No.
Right.
But
Right.
part of what made them was the fact that on their way to bumping into the goal line called I Got a Record Deal, they were pointed into a studio where somebody like Alvin existed, who knows what he knows, directed what he knows at what they didn't, and was able to help them capture it. And that's the part where I think our industry is sadly lacking when we advance this process so fast that we don't even acknowledge, in some cases, these things that occur that create literal magic in the case of some careers, because people were consciously making decisions that were generated from years of experience. That what he's using is like Rodger said, is a very old technique. I mean, Al Schmidt, the same thing. I mean, his genius is mic placement. His genius is mic placement.
Yeah,
He can place a mic in such a way where it's going to capture the full sonic quality of everything it needs. He can look at what's got to be recorded, and he can place. I'm placing these here, and you know what? That's experience, but he knows how to start. He's starting so he finishes strong. That's the difference when you notice old folks work, Morris. Well, I'll use your word, old. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, and when I say that, I mean, the season guy.
Yeah, season. Yeah, there you go.
I just think, for my grandmother, like for example, my grandmother's 95 years old, right? When me and my grandmother talk, some of the stuff my grandmother tell me, man, it's life changing. I mean, it's a blessing for her to still be here. But it's amazing to me how we can talk about basic stuff and the simple principles. It's like nuggets when you talk to her, because she's had 95 years to experience life. I'm not even half that old yet, half her age, but it's like I listen with that air, just like guys like yourself and whatever. And you mentioned Al Schmidt. I was looking into stuff that Al Schmidt was doing back, I want to say back in those days, those Sam Cooke days and all back, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Back in those days, because I have a quartet song that I'm working on for my record, and I wanted to record it how they recorded back then, I wanted to sound exactly like that. When they would take those big old ribbon mics, it'd be one mic for the background singers, you know what I mean? And they would do all the backgrounds on that one mic. And you might have a mic that was somewhere close to the bass cabinet and picking up the drums too. And you know what I mean? It was just that kind of stuff, before we had 60 mics, on a session for a song, It was like they might have had 3 or 4 channels and took that and then bounced that to another machine, which, gave them another couple tracks maybe. But a lot of times they had to do it one and gone, one and it, go in and press it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I'm definitely a student. So when I say, that just means respect it for me,
Yeah. No, it's cool. I just know that I've known Alvin for a long time, and he's a real smart brother. He knows a lot, and I really wish that he got more due for the things that came out of Atlanta. The two cats that I know that spent a lot of time crafting a lot of that music from Atlanta is Neil Pogue and Alvin Spice. Yeah. And the reason, Neil's a great producer and engineer as well, but they just don't get enough mention, and it's because everybody's so busy. They ushered in this era of the hip hop producer down south. And so they did such a good job at creating that lane for them that nobody looked back and created a lane for the engineer. And you need to have that. You need to have the props, man. And I don't mean just regional props, because a lot of us, I always try and make time to kind of point to the people who are behind the scenes that created movements, because the Atlanta thing movement. right?
Right.
And I spent time down there working with Organized Noise and a couple others, but it was a movement, and I saw it. I saw it in its early stages, and I saw what it turned into, and it was a result of a few people up late at night till 2 and 3 in the morning.
Right.
And people were falling through there, and some people were giving beats and doing what they do, but sewing that stuff together was the people who know how to use the tools.
Right.
You know, and I really think that we, you know, every time we mention these guys, you know, if we know something about their history, and I've spent some time just gathering stuff on everybody everywhere. So if you say Chicago, I'm gonna say Danny Leaks. If you say Miami, I'm gonna say, you know, some other people, and because there's a lot of people, man, that we hear their music, but we take for granted the track record that they have in the development of who they are as an engineering profession. You know, Jimmy Douglas was around long before Timbaland, right? Jimmy Douglas was around since Atlantic. So you need to understand, when you're looking at Timbaland's success, you're looking at Jimmy Douglas. I don't give a what anybody says. I'm looking at the science that got them
to sound what it sounds like.
Guys to sound consistent and score hit. Yes, they're talented. Yes, they hear some things in their head. But they went to somebody with seasoned experience who understood the sonic nature of what needs to happen for their ideas to translate on a big scale in order to get that name and reputation they got now. And there'll probably be a bunch of people writing, oh, yeah, no,
out there.
Really, but that's the way I feel, you know.
And you know what, Dave? It's going to be some cats like, you know, some of us is going to be standing on your shoulders.
Yeah, and I hope so, man, because the thing is, that's why I asked you guys, how do you feel about that? Because I think it's very freeing when you can notice that somebody who is in a region doing a specific genre of music, like gospel, and says, you know what, this guy is going here, I went and saw it, and he's mixing hit records, and they're winning awards here. Every time we see that and we say it, it disproves what we read in magazines that says, you've got to have this, you've got to have this, I got the latest, my signal to noise is this, I cost this much, I'm here, they're over there, we all got it, you don't. It's
right.
You're right, man, it's toxic bullshit, because it really just gets you off of the point. The point is, this is great music that people are creating, and the way that it gets to be greater is that people who care about it get it and work with it, whether they work with it at home on their home crafted stuff or work with it in $1 million studio. It's going to be what it's going to be if it's supposed to be something.
Right.
If it's supposed to be something, it will be unstoppable.
You know, one of the things, you know, that I deal with as a studio owner is what I call the ignorance of my customers. You know, my customers, they come in and they're expecting to see certain things. It's like if you're in urban music, if you don't have an Avalon 737, you know, it's like,
man, you ain't got no Avalon in here,
you know, you don't wear the Avalon, you know. So I'm dealing with, you know, I have to deal with customers that when they come to my studio, you know, and to some degree, some of the things that I've purchased is really more for them than for me, because there's an expectation that there be certain things here, even though they have no clue of what it is or how you use it. But if they don't see, you know, like back in the day when we got our stereos, if the ones that had the most lights had the best stereos, right? If your stereo had more lights than mine, it was assumed that your stereo was better than mine because you got all these lights. So, you know, the ignorance of some of the customers that come, you know, to a studio, you know, if they go to a studio and they don't see the big SSL, the big Neve board, you know, then they somehow believe or think that you're substandard in some way. That's, you know, going back to the point I was making about John Yash. He has a simple setup. This dude's got 6, 7, 8 Grammys. You know, he's the hottest mix engineer in gospel music. I mean, he's just hot. And he charges an insane amount of. He makes an insane amount of money. This guy.
Oh, he gets paid.
He'll get $30,000 to mix a record. One record.
I mean, he gets paid. And you know, the other thing was that I noticed, and this was the thing, Dave, that really blew me away too. Man, the first time I went down there with him, when I went down, the first time I met him and his assistant engineer. We went to breakfast. and so we just met up somewhere and we just talked. And I asked him different things and everything. And so he was like, next time, when you come, come by, you come by the spot when you come back down. We'll talk, kind of show you what I'm doing. So, and we did that. And when he opened up some of the records that were out, and I saw how little he did to some of it, like when I saw that, he opened up a tom track and just pulled maybe 2 dB out of at 300 range or something, and I was like, okay, how does this sound like this? And I was really trying to figure that out. Like, how in the world does this stuff sound like this? And that's all he did. And I think I mentioned it to you, Rodger, before. Like, the tracking, whoever tracked this had to be on point. And then, it's like, because if he didn't have to do hardly that much to it, that meant it was cut really well. And I think that's a lot of what's, I think what's missing, man, is getting people that will spend time to learn how to track it, man, and just that fundamental, man. And I think you really don't, technically, do you need to have everything, plug-in wise this out? No. Because out of the plugins I got, which Rodger does have a whole bunch more than I have, I probably use 10 all the time, and I have hundreds, but there are probably 10 that I go to for my main types of things, all the time. So I think that goes to show that it's not really about that. It's about what's in your head and understanding, what you hear and what you need to get, man, and what you need to, how to apply it, what you know, and what you don't know as well, I think. But
and that, kind of, going back full circle, that's kind of the thing that, I don't know, for me, I've just, and again, Morris and I talk about this, Bill and I to some degree, we've talked about it. I just think, it's just my opinion for what it's worth. The thing that I find that separates, the people that are just doing work that's just kind of like good enough and it's okay, and those that are like, the Dave Hamptons and the Khaliqs and the, John Yashes and the, all these other guys, is that the new guys don't understand that, yes, we're recording, but nothing changed except the tools. The tools changed, but the science didn't. And so the new guys don't understand the science. It's sort of like teaching a kid how to add, subtract, and multiply only with a calculator. It's like, you know how to add, subtract, and multiply with a calculator, but can I give you this piece of paper and a pencil? And so that's kind of that's what I see. And so, and I think that that's the advantage that the more seasoned professional has, because they really understand the science of what they're doing. And so, you can't, some guys can't tell you the difference between DBVU and DBFS. They don't know, and they just don't know. And so if you don't understand these basic things, how can you have, how do you know that, how are you going to get proper gain structure and things of that nature? They don't even know what gain structure is in some cases, really, so anyway, I'm going to be quiet and mute.
But it goes back again to what Marsh was talking about. The basics are not being taught. They've pretty much never been taught. You can't go anywhere and find a video, because I've tried. You can't go anywhere and find a video about how to make a mix with just your faders. You can't do it. But if you go and you read accounts of when people go and they sit with mixers who specialize in fader moves, etc., that's all they talk about. They're just in awe. Like Andy Wallace, for instance, they're like, oh, well, he had a couple of LA2As and he used all board EQ, board compressors, and his faders were moving the whole time. And that's all he did, and his mixes sound great. It's like, that's because that's how it's done. But nobody's teaching how it's done. You can go and you can look at these tutorials and stuff, and people just like, oh, well, I just put this compressor on and then that compressor on and then ran it through a bus compressor and then through a 2-bus compressor, and then a limiter, and that's it.
Yeah, they got
Right.
lucky.
You know?
Right. And you know the other thing about that is, the funny thing is, I was telling Roger, you said it about the fader moves. I feel like, man, now this is just me. I feel like it's impossible to get a great mix, man, without automation, without like being able to have some sense. It's like your mix almost. I think it has to be breathing and like moving, and I don't know. It's something about automation to me that does what, and of course you could, you set your compressor to go a certain way, and it won't go over that level and all that. But man, it's just something like when you go, and I started learning on. I used to go and work with this engineer, and he was from Charlotte. His name is Mark Williams. He still does a lot of mixing now. He mixes on he's got a old MCI that he got a guy in Nashville, Randy Blevins. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with him. He's like the human cat in the hat. He looks like that literally. And but he rebuilds the old MCI console, tape machines and all. And but Mark, we started at this studio, which is gone now, Reflection, and it was like on a Neve VR, like 60 channel Neve with the flying faders, with the Martin Sound automation. And I used to sit and just watch him when we were going through these mixes, and it was the flying faders. It was like, I'm like, hey man, how are those things moving? And it's like, well, it's called automation. And I'm like, well, why are you doing that? Why don't you just put them at the level and then just let it stay there? And it's like, well, your mix is like a living thing. It's kind of like an organism. It's, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like it's alive. So you got to kind of move in and out. Like where your strings are might be cool when a piano's not playing a certain part at that level. So you may need to tuck them. And then, the vocal might be going on at a certain part, and you may need to, when the vocal comes in though, you need to maybe tuck this, and when there might be a 2-second spot where the vocal is not saying nothing, that you need to bring the strings up right in that little area, and then bring it. So it's like all those things. So I think automation is important, but I really wish maybe some of the senior members of this call can help us, and I really wish that we could do. I want to learn more of this kind of stuff. To me, I think it would be really priceless, man, if we could get some of those guys to do that kind of stuff. Let's deal with the fundamental of it. Teach us how, the approach to doing this when you don't have all those extra gadgets. Like, how do you do it if you have, just a console and one Lexicon reverb unit, and maybe a chorus or an old Alicia's, and Alicia's one outboard compressor to work with, and maybe some guitar effect pedals. And how do I get a mix like that without having, the latest plug-in that has all that built in and all that stuff, I just think that would be a cool thing.
And that's the thing right there, is like all those guys, all those great records, particularly back in the day, they had much less than what we have. They had way less gear, way less channels. They'd be, it was, when I was talking to Bruce Woodine one time, he was like, man, when they went from 4 to 8 tracks, he just thought he was in heaven because he got 8 tracks now. So those guys had way less, and even with the outboard gear they had one of. They didn't have like 15 LA2As like we got running across our sessions, and 25 1170. They just had a few of those pieces of gear, and they made it work. And I think now what we have today is like over processed. Everything's over processed, overcooked. The sound's not organic, and then and then we're trying to reference back to these mixes that the Bruce Woodines and the Smiths and all these other guys, the Yashes and all these other guys, we're trying to compare, and they're not doing all that crap, but what the common denominator that I find that they have They all have a good understanding of how it was, and they brought how it was to how it is with the new tools. That's what I find to be the common denominator.
Yeah, definitely. That way you know where you're going, so that you don't stop until you arrive there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea, Morris, and you know, it's pretty easy to do. Like I have 16 channels here. Rodger has 28 channels over there. You know, we can easily do mixes and demos of mixes utilizing mostly fader moves. I don't know why it said that. I didn't click anything on you, Morris. I didn't mute you. But yeah, I mean, I think it's useful, and I think it also would show people who, not that there's anything wrong with, you know, mixing with a mouse or a trackpad or a trackball. Everybody does it, but I think it would give an answer to Glassford's question from earlier as far as what the differences might be of having an actual control surface.
Right.
Guys, I wanted to thank you for this great talk. It's 3 a.m. here, so I'm gonna be bouncing out here, and I want to thank you for this awesome information, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks
You
for
too,
hanging
man.
on, Vlady.
Hey, good to see you, Vlady.
Good to see you.
Bless you, man.
Phil, Rodger, Morris, thanks once again,
Bless you,
guys.
man. No problem.
See ya.
Have a good night. Peace. But yeah, I think that's, you know, I think it's, see, and the funny part is that at this point in time, the question is going to be who's actually going to do the work once they see that tutorial. You know what I'm saying? Once they see how you can do things with fading, who's really going to do it?
Right, because it's so easy. It's so
Yeah.
easy to just do what they're doing. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, why to go through that? You know?
Yeah, but the difference is that you know, basically the way you get mixes wide is through difference. So you want things to be different on either side. So you know, like the other day, somebody asked a question. They were like, "Well, I'm recording my own vocals on a track, and I am using the same microphone, and I'm recording myself 3 times, one to go down the middle, one for the left, and one for the right, and I'm not getting very much separation." I'm like, well, that's because everything's exactly the same and it's overlapping. So what you have to do is you have to start EQing things. You put your main one down the middle, you get that the way you want to hear it. You put up your one for the left, let's say, but you either sum the 2 bus to mono or you put it up in mono, and then you EQ that until you can hear both of those clearly. Then you add the 3rd one and EQ that so you can hear all 3 clearly. Then you pan it back out. You know, but it's like something like that wouldn't occur to them because nobody tells them that.
Right, and that's exactly the thing. You know, it's like all these how do you do, you know, like I had brought up the point earlier, you know, when the guy was talking about, which is nothing wrong with, you know, automating plugins and things of that nature, but sometimes it's like, why go through the extra trouble, you know, just duplicate that section of the track, put it on another track, set it and forget it and be done with it.
Right.
You know, I mean,
but I think it's just part of showing. I think part of that is people's job per se, as a promo thing to show, you know, because a lot of people, they giving them a lot of stuff, and some of them, you know, some of them actually get paid for some stuff they endorse. So, you know, I think it's part of the thing of trying to show people what they can do with certain stuff. You know, is it necessary? You know, sometimes it depends how involved it is, because sometimes, you know, and then, you know, it kind of depends on what you're dealing with resource-wise, track-wise. You know, you figure if you're in Pro Tools, especially LE before now, you really couldn't make that choice to just automatically get another track, because you might not be able to have any more. You know, you might be maxed out at 32, and, you know, so you kind of might have to do that. But you know, I think if you have the resources to do it, the other thing is, okay, duplicate that part, chop it, put it on another track, get the setting that needs to be there, and just audio suite it and print it and have it on another track, and then you don't have to have a plug-in on that track anyway. You know what I mean? It's just a piece of audio. So, but yeah, I think that, I don't know, man. Some stuff is, but I have to say this though, Rodger. Some stuff is fun automating plugins. I have to say that.
Oh well, there's no doubt. I'm just saying.
It's fun.
I'm just saying, you know,
doing a little
sometimes
funny stuff.
Sometimes the work, you know, it's all about the workflow, you know, and
Right.
Sometimes it's just easier, you know, because sometimes it's like, you know, hey man, every time I say the word X, I want to do some weird effect or whatever, and it's like, okay, well, just, you know, I mean, if you just really want to do all the automating, that's fine, but it's like, why not just, you know, take the easy way, you know? So I guess my point is that there's more than one way of doing something, and that those little, you know, ways that the more seasoned people, you know, those ways of learning how to do more with less. If you know how to do more with less, you know, the byproduct of that for guys like us is it equates to efficiency, because they know how to do more with less. And
Right.
so we've got all these tools and all this stuff, but they know how to do more with less. And so
Right.
knowing how to do more with less, you know, automatically makes a guy like me more efficient, because now I know how to do it the long way, because I got all these software tools that do all this routing and stuff for me to some degree. But how did you do it, you know, before then? Like, you know, like we were saying, how did you do it then? It's like we could still, you know, create stems too, you know, and mix, you know, like those guys did. They created, you know, they only had so many tracks.
Right.
So eventually you got to get down to some stems, you know, and they mix in with stems. A lot of mastering engineers, sometimes I get work, I get stems. Sometimes I'd rather have stems because the mix ain't all that good. So, you know, it's just, and when I mix, eventually I do get down to stems. It's like my music, my background vocals, my lead vocals, you know, or maybe my drums, my guitars, keyboards, background vocals, and lead vocals. You know, I'm not dealing with a whole bunch of faders. You know, it just depends.
And when you have backgrounds, are they normally down the middle, or are they wide out to the sides?
Well, with the music that I tend to work on, you know, it tends to be more 3-part harmony type stuff. You know, so we do separate them.
Hold on 1 second.
Not completely separated, but, you know, they're as they would be, you know, center, left, right.
Well, yeah, I tend to. I most of the time I don't put BGVs up the middle when it's something like with when they're you know, the lead vocal or whatnot. Thank you, man. No, I just said thanks. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, well that goes without saying, but I mean there are times that, you know, like.
But I've seen people do it though.
But
I know some people in Nashville do them left, right, and center. They'll do.
What I do with my center, I will automate the pan position depending on what's happening in the song.
Yeah, like but the reason why I don't do it, like, and this is something else I learned from Yash. Yash told me to always, because at the time, you know, I would have some time to do, you know, passes in odd numbers. Thanks. I would do them in odd numbers, meaning I could do 3 stacks with the background. And Yash said, anytime he's like, man, always do even numbers of background. So if you do stacks, do 2. If you're gonna do more than 2, do 4. Do them in an even number. That way you can balance them on the left and right spectrum. And which, you know, if you get a certain type of balance anyway on that left and right, you know, if you get them at a certain level, it's almost like pulling them to the middle anyway. You know what I'm saying? Right. If you get them at a certain level and they're sonically really close. But Bill, now how do you typically approach that?
Approach background vocals?
Like, yeah, as far as your panning, do you do the center, and like what ways do you find you do it to make it work like that?
It depends. Either I will. Okay, let's say I had one lead vocalist going down the middle, and then I have one background vocal. I'll either take that background vocal, send it down the middle, and EQ it in a way where I can hear both of them down the middle, or I'll pan it slightly off to the side so that I can hear both of them even though one isn't centered. More likely what I'll do is I'll probably send it 100% to a micro shifter. So I'll send it to, you know, whatever, like Soundtoys, micro shift.
Eventide or something like that.
Or Eventide, Eventide Ultra Channel.
So you get the width, to get the width from it.
Yeah. So the when the backgrounds come up, they're on the sides, but each side is a little different from the other, and the lead is still down the middle. But then again, it's like you said, it's like if you have an odd number, then you would go center or center-ish and left and right. But then again, it also just depends on what they recorded. Like sometimes they'll record 2 high-frequency background vocals and 1 medium or low frequency, in which case I would take the medium and put it in the center, and then I would put the 2 highs, the 2 different performances on the sides, or the medium that would have been in the center, I'll send that to the microshift, so it's on the sides too, but it's just a warped version of 1 performance on each side. You see what I'm saying? So long as I have even numbers, I'll split them out. But then again, it depends on what the rest of the song is doing. So let's say I have 4. I might not put them wide, all 4. I might have 2 of them panned in slightly. So you get more of a wall of sound. But again, that would depend on whether you have highs and lows. So I would put the high frequency backgrounds farther out, and then the lower the frequency is, I would bring them in a V-type pattern. But it all depends on what's going to work with that particular song.
Gotcha. Morris still there?
He may have lost him. He may have been, may have lost that, run out of Wi-Fi for a minute.
Yeah, you know, he got that Sprint server. You don't have Sprint, do you?
No.
I'm always flexing them on that Sprint service. Yeah, but it, you know, again, not to beat a dead horse, but you know, I'm at a point in my career where I feel like I got a pretty firm grasp on a lot of things, but there's a fine line between good and great. You know, it's a really fine line. I mean, with, you know, and even as you buy gear, you know, sometimes, you know, we're going from gear to better gear. It's not exponential. You know, it's like, okay, just because something, you know, your old piece was 500 and this one is 1,000 doesn't mean it's going to be twice as good.
No,
you know? So, but it's just a fine line, and so I'm thirsting for, you know, the Bruce Swedins of the world. You know, these guys that, you know, every time I mix something, my reference to how good I'm mixing is the Thriller album. You know, I'll pull that Thriller album out, man, and it's like, geez, this, I mean, to me, it's one of the best mix. I know, I think you had a post out, you know, recently, like, you know, I didn't chime in, but, you know, some of the best mix records. Maybe, was that you? Did you do that recently?
What was the topic?
Maybe it wasn't you. Somebody posted something that's like, what's, you know, they were asking for the opinion of the best mix records, you know, ever, you know, and to me, for me, that Thriller record is probably my all-time favorite mixed record.
Okay.
I love the record, but I mean, if I'm just listening to it technically, that Thriller album is just amazing. It's just amazing. So, you know, that's kind of what I use as a benchmark for myself. You know, when I go back and I listen to records, I just pull that Thriller record out, and it's like, man, that's what I want my stuff to sound like. That's my goal. My goal used to be I wanted to sound like Morris Mingo stuff.
Shut up, man.
I'd have moved on to Bruce Swedin.
Yeah, somebody who's gonna give you something to be like.
But John Yash, man, I've been, I haven't really said his name a lot, but I've been, a lot of the more major work that I've been able to work on is all through John Yash as a mastering engineer and Vashawn Mitchell.
Cool.
So it's just, I'm just as a mastering engineer, you get to a place when you get to work on a regular basis with guys that got Grammys. It's like I'll ride his coattail any day of the week. So this guy's got minimum 7 Grammys.
Yeah, that's one of the things for me is that I like to do what people like. I don't like to reinvent the wheel.
Of course. Why?
No reason. I like to do what friends of mine. Say it again, Morris.
That which is proven to work.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, a friend of mine, Ryan West, he's all about UAD plugins.
Yeah.
And I had already heard work of his that I respected. I was like, okay, I'm getting the UAD stuff. And to me, it's head and shoulders above everything else.
You will get no argument from me. I cannot do what I do.
Nor will you get any argument from me.
I just couldn't do it. Because, and the thing is, there are a lot of plug-in, developers and companies out there. I've never heard anybody say UAD stuff is crap.
Nope.
Never, not even from a competitor have I heard that.
Nobody can say that.
Nope. And it's like that's the thing. It's like I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's like, okay, if you're telling me that this record and this record and this record that I heard and liked that you mixed with these plugins, I'm getting those.
Yeah.
And then the same thing with the headphones I have on now. I got the ATH M50s.
Mm-hmm.
We did.
I love Audio-Technica headphones, dude.
Great. We had a hangout with Richard Furch. He said something like that he has like 6 pairs of them. I don't know how that works out, but he was talking about that's how he rocks is ATH M50s. And this other friend of mine, Eric Racy, who has mixed for a bunch of people, and then he was on tour with Katy Perry and yada yada. He was like, yeah, I take ATH M50s with me, blah blah blah. I said, okay, I'm getting the ATH.
You hear that comment, you're starting to hear it among people you respect.
Yeah.
There has to be something to it.
Yeah, and then it becomes an educational experience because you learn new things from it. And like I was telling you the other week, Rodger, of the rep tones from Dave, and that's another learning experience.
Yeah. I keep meaning to talk to him. I need to get a pair of those from him.
How much do they run?
400.
It's powered, or are they passive?
They are powered. Wait, let me get this right. I think I paid 400 with the amp.
Okay.
They are. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. Let me say that properly. They are passive, but they come with an amp. You can buy them either by themselves or with an amp.
Got you.
So I'm pretty sure I got them for 400 with a matching amp.
Yeah. Every time I see him at NAMM, last time I saw him, I was like, I was gonna get him then, but I was like, I don't know, I just didn't.
Yeah, it's just one of those things because I'm not in a treated room and I'm not really a speaker user. I'm more of a headphone mixer. But another friend of mine, Jake Antelis, he was talking about how he mixes on he has overtones, and he just mixes that at a low level, which does not, scientifically take the room out of the equation. But if you're mixing at a low level, the reflections are going to be so low that you're not really going to hear them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I said,
the whole thing with near fields to begin with was to try and do as much as possible to eliminate, the properties of the room. That's why they're near fields. But
Right.
unfortunately, what happens with those of us that have near fields, they're playing their near fields too loud. So, that's why Yash can mix in a room that he's mixing, because again, he knows all this stuff.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
knows. He's got some near fields, and he's not playing his near fields too loud, and doing other things, all kinds of weird stuff, that he would be doing ordinarily. Now, my room that I'm in, it's treated much more than what you can see. I mean, the little foam stuff that you see on the wall, that's really just decoration. It's not really there for any acoustic reason.
Okay.
It's like if I take it down, my wall's gonna look a mess. But it's kind of treated pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. So.
But that's the thing, is that it's everything that other than, the MC mix I got because I needed it as a workflow improvement for video editing.
Right.
Because, for instance, there was work that I couldn't take because the budget was so low that it wouldn't have included a music or a sound mix. Right? Because what would happen is there might be a 5-minute video, and it might take me an hour to do a sound mix on it, because I'm going one channel at a time, and I go back and, oh, this doesn't work, let me try that. So now, like I was explaining to you earlier, now I have 16 channels, which I don't even need for video, but when I got my 8 for video, you have your 2 channels of dialogue, you have your background sound, you have your music, and you have your effects. So basically you have everything out in front of you. So now all of a sudden, once you get aboard...
Dude, Morris, can you mute your mic, man? You just getting all that smacking in this... Come on, man. Don't nobody want smacking on your food.
I ain't even eating no food.
He's over there throwing down, he's doing something.
You doing something, all I hear is...
Hey, man, I was
and he videotaping this, right?
Yeah, it's for posterity. So,
hey, I guess that's why the video's not on me, huh?
But it is on you, because that's how Google Plus works. Whoever's making the most noise gets the camera.
Oh, that's deep, man. My bad. Hey, edit this out, Bill.
That's not. Nah, I can't do that. It's all right. Never mind. But anyway, the point is that with 8 channels instead of 1 channel, all of a sudden, a music mix that would have taken an hour for a 5-minute video now takes 7 minutes, because all you have to do is play it through, and then when you hear something you don't like, you back up a little bit, you move a couple of faders, and it's on touch anyway, so you move them, and then when you've got what you want, you let it go, and it goes back where it's supposed to be, and you can pretty much do a music mix now in 7 minutes instead of 60 minutes. So that means that instead of saying, oh, it would take me an extra hour to do this project, so their budget doesn't include that, then I could take more business more quickly and pay off the board more quickly. So everything worked out. So that was the thing about the MC mix, but basically, other than that, everything that I get is because it's a workflow improvement that has been suggested to me by people who are already successful at what they do.
Right. And again, you made the point earlier. No point in reinventing the wheel.
Nope.
No point. So, that's why, again, I know, speaking for myself, that's why, I want to tap into those, I want to stand on the shoulders of the guys who've already done it,
Yep.
For those that are willing to share and, and have this knowledge transfer and this, this synergy, if you will, That's what I want. I mean, because again, I'm at a place. I feel very confident in what I do and what I can do. But again, there's a fine line between good and great. And the greatest among us, there's just certain things that they do and know that we don't do and don't know.
Yeah.
It's not really the gear anymore. It's something that they know that we don't know.
Yep, and what you don't know can hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the main stepping stones for me was when I found out about parallel processing instead of serial processing. You know, so it's like you might have a bass guitar, and you think that the way to go is to put Sans Amp on your bass guitar, and then put R bass after the Sans Amp, and then put a C4 after the R bass, and then put an L1 after the C4, when really all you're doing is getting rid of your gains with each level. And it's actually better to have parallel tracks where you might have your DI by itself, and then you might have your distortion track, and then you might have your sub bass track, and then you might have your compression track, and then you blend the four of those to get what you want. Like, just something simple like that. You can't. That's not something you can hear. That's something you can. You have to find out from someone, or from reading, or from watching videos, or whatever you're gonna do. Somehow you have to find out that this is something that people do, because it's a parallel signal. There's no way that you're going to be able to listen to this thing and say, oh, I know that they made that up by high passing the DI and putting Sans Amp on that, and then low passing the DI and putting R bass on that. You can't tell that because it's all happening at the same time. So that, and it's the same thing with reverb, like the whole idea of making a reverb so low that you can feel the difference when you mute it and unmute it, but you can't actually hear it. It doesn't register to you as a reverb, but it adds texture to your vocal or whatever you put it on, and that's one of the things. You can't separate that as a listener to say, oh, I happen to know that that is a vocal with a UAD 140 plate on it, because the plate is so low that it's blended in. So these are things that you wouldn't know about, that you have to find out about from somebody who's actually done it.
Right. Did you go? No, now he did mute himself, or maybe you muted him. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, he's there. I think he's still throwing down.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, I think we probably, you know, one of the things I want to do, you know, and this is just a suggestion, you know, we didn't get a chance to talk like about the topics this time and all that thing. I think it'd be good to, like, you know, way ahead of time, and I maybe get some topics, and I don't know what to offer or what to suggest, but I thought it was good. I think this one, you know, Vlady really kind of like helped set it off a little bit, because he kind of asked a good question that kind of led, you know, and segue to some other things. But I do think it's a good idea to have some topics, and because I think, you know, your whole reason for doing this is for technical reasons. You know, to spread the you know, the knowledge that we share amongst each other. But I think, you know, I would like to see, you know, again, I'm a fundamentalist, but I mean, everybody can speak for themselves. But I would just really like to see, you know, some topics that are geared more toward that in some ways, because and it's just my opinion, I just think that a lot of what's wrong with, or a lot of the pitfalls that many of us are having, can be traced back to a lack of understanding about something that should be kind of fundamental.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with both of those points. And yeah, today is pretty much freestyle, but yeah, I agree that it's a good idea for the near future to come up with some specific topics that we want to go pretty much in depth on and stick to those.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, one of the things that, you know, like Khaliq used to say, you know, years ago, and I don't know, I keep copying stuff. I mean, it's stuff that he would say that I've never forgotten. And he used to say, "You understand a compressor? That's the key to the kingdom." He used to always say that. And so I made it a point to make sure that I really knew how to use a compressor, like really, and that I could repeat it, you know, not just get lucky, you know. And that's where the technical part of using a compressor comes in. And it's like, okay, you know, a compressor, it reduces dynamic range. How can you do something predictable if you don't know what you're dealing with at the track level? You know, it's like, where are my peaks and what are they? You know, so I know exactly what my peak is, so I know what's going to happen when that peak hits my compressor. You know, so things like that, you know, that are technical in nature, they really understand what the compressor is going to do, how it's going to respond, is important. You know, all that stuff's just important to me, and I think that a lot of time it's the most abused processor there is to me, closely followed by EQ. But the compressor is the reason why a lot of people's mixes suck. The lack of knowing how to use it or the abuse of it.
Yeah, I agree. That might be a good topic for next time. Compression. I mean, the other thing is that depending on your listening environment, which goes back to what I was saying about the right headphones or the right speakers, depending on your listening environment, you can't even hear the differences in the tone that compressors bring. You know, so I have, well, technically 4, but I don't use the legacy one. I have 3 different UAD LA2s.
Right.
I have the LA2, I have the LA2A gray, and LA2A silver.
Right.
And they all have different speeds of attack and release, but they also texturally sound different from each other.
Right. And again, you know, because those are the sorts of things. It's like when we see, and I think we talked about this one time before, you know, when we say, okay, of course there are certain manufacturers or brands, if you will, of compressors, but even more than that, there are certain types, just like microphones. Is it a ribbon? Is it a compressor? Is it a whatever? Okay, is it a FET? Is it an optical? Blah, 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 you know, on the compressors. And that type of compressor has certain characteristics. But there are a lot of brands that are optical. There are a lot of brands that are FET, or whatever they are. You know, there's a lot of brands. And of course, UAs have a certain characteristic that may be different than someone else's. But the point of the matter is, it's like, when would I use what type on what? Exactly. When would it be ideal to use an optical or not?
Exactly.
When would it be ideal to use, you know, or whatever? And so those are the sorts of things that it's like that I think are missing. You know, you can't use an optical compressor on everything. Well, you can, but it may not be the best choice.
Right.
You know, may not be the best choice. Maybe, you know, you got some really fast transient type information. Well, the LA2A is probably not going to be your best choice. You might want to use something different, you know, and what would I use as an example? So those are the sorts of things that I think people don't understand when they say compressor. It's like, okay, it's a compressor. Maybe the only difference in some of the compressors are it doesn't have certain, you know, elements that other compressors have, like attack and release and hold, and, you know, is the threshold a variable or not? You know, blah blah blah. What is all button mode on an 1176? You know, blah. You know, when would you use it? And really, what is limiting? And, you know, why would I limit as opposed to compress? And, you know, those sorts of things. You know, and I think that's what's missing, and particularly with regard to the compressor.
Sure, and then there are other elements, like there's a compressor called the Rocket, which will attack and release so fast that you can actually use it as a distortion box, as if it were a culture vulture, you know. Right. Or you can take the L1 and you can create a distortion or a cutting sound on a bass with an L1 by making the release really quick.
Mm-hmm.
So it keeps catching and reloading.
And again, those are the sorts of things, that kind of begs to what I call like the little things that, people know that a lot of us don't know. And those are the sorts of techniques. I think it's good for us to even, like, with this technical stuff, some of it is like, hey, let's share some techniques. How do you, set up a mix? Because I think everybody has a formula. Everybody has a formula. Like with me, with ambient types of things, with delays and reverbs and stuff like that. I have 3 reverbs that I set up, on every mix. Some is short, some is medium, and some are long. I'm going to have that on every single one of everything I work on is going to have that.
Okay.
I'm going to have my delay, so it's like, when would you use a short as opposed to a medium? Or why would you, why do I want to put a short on something that you wouldn't think that you would put it on? I might have all 3 on them.
Right.
Because the first thing, I want to get rid of some of the proximity. Okay. So there's reasons why, you would want to do this sort of thing. And so I think it's good to, with the technique stuff too. And Morris disappeared, didn't he?
Yeah, he's in and out. Yeah, that's another really good topic. We should definitely do the compressor topic and the multiple reverb topic.
Yeah. Because some people they figure that it's going to set up one reverb, and that's going to be the one reverb for everything on the whole song. And it's like, but you can't treat everything that way. So I use various reverbs, but I have 3 types they're set up in 3 different ways for me. It's like a short, medium, and long.
Sure.
And sometimes they get 2 of those treatments, and sometimes they get all 3. It just depends on what it is and why. But
and then there are some verbs that have a different decay depending on a crossover of the frequency range.
Yeah.
So you might have one verb that has the long bass response, another one that has a long mid-range response.
Right. So like here's a Rodger Willis, thing. Anytime you mic something, there's automatically gonna be some form of proximity. That's generally because most of what we mic is close mic'd. So that automatically makes the instrument not natural. Automatically. When you listen to it in its natural state, it's not right here.
That's true. Yeah. Totally.
So that's why I'll have a short reverb just to get rid of the proximity. Now I back the instrument up in its natural place. Now I'm gonna think about the reverb and those other things. So when you get into these close mic situations, nothing sounds natural right here. It's just not how it sounds unless you're the drummer and you're right in front of the drum. But it's just not. Some things are just not natural. So vocals and things of that nature, everybody doesn't have great mic technique. So I need to get rid of some of the proximity because it's just not natural. So
absolutely.
Just as an example of why I would use it.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic. Let's definitely get to that in the near future. Morris, you back with us? Morris.
Yes, sir. Man, I'm just getting home, man. So I was trying to get in there without getting out the car, making a bunch of noise and all that stuff.
You already made all the noise we can stand.
Yeah.
Nah, man, but I was doing that, then I'd come in, set the alarm off, and all that stuff, man.
Yeah.
But
so I noticed trying to come up with some topic, coming up with, like a roadmap, not necessarily in any particular order, but just things to think about in the future in terms of topics, and so I kind of suggested perhaps a topic dealing with compressors and how to use them, what types there are, and when you would use what type as opposed to a different type. We talked about reverb,
like the different attacks or whatever, like why you use an LA2A versus
or
how
like
1176
like
words versus
like a DBX 160 as opposed to a LA2A.
Well, because I would use it. I would use that, especially if we're talking about drums, just because the attack time or whatever. Like it's what do you call it? Material dependent, basically.
Yeah,
I mean, but it works better for that type of stuff.
Right. And technically, they're different types of they're both compressors, but they're different type of compressors.
Well, one I think is a FET.
Yeah, and one's opto.
Opto compressor.
Yeah. So again,
and then the other thing is, I think a lot of them. I mean, I would use opto more for. I think even in vocal situations though too. I would think though.
Sometimes I use two different
kinds of
compressors on the same thing. Maybe the first thing I want to do is I want to be able to have something that can deal with my attacks faster, like a 160 or 1176.
Right.
Then I want
to transient stuff.
Right. And then after that I might want to be able to smooth it out. Something a little smoother, because I got to exactly. So I might follow that with a LA2A depending on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So anyway.
That stuff. I mean, I think that's the stuff, and I think it'll help a lot of younger people too. Because man, I know a lot of people who just have a lot of stuff. They get it. Inbox is not the thing now, but they would get the inbox or Empower to get it on their face, get Pro Tools, and then they call that the studio. And,
I call them MacBook and the Mic Studios.
Yeah, but it's more to it, and I think it would be valuable, better at this stuff. So I just think it's about the people that know. I mean, you know a whole lot of stuff, but of course you're definitely one of those guys that I think know a lot, but you've been on the earth a lot longer too, so some things you know, because you've been able to live it a little bit longer, maybe a decade or two longer than most of us.
Anyway,
And I think, a lot of times, but the thing is, me being younger, I think somebody like me, and even those younger than I am, I'll be 40 in a couple months. And so, I'm that old guy to somebody's, that's 20-something, it's like the same gap. But I think that stuff that you spent all these years learning, now all of a sudden you help a person that's 20 years old get the knowledge that you took, that may have took you 20, 30 years to get. You know what I'm saying? But then I think that helps us to progress at a faster level, and then it causes us to progress at a much younger level. And I think a lot of time people don't realize the value of what your mentoring can do for somebody, And
it goes to what Bill was saying earlier. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. I mean, look, I haven't been doing this, and let me just say this: just because somebody is 55 years old and they happen to be in the recording doesn't mean they've been in recording for 55 years.
Right. It just means
sometimes they just got in it a couple of years ago themselves. So I mean, I've been doing it a little while, but the point that you made is valid. I mean, you have to respect a person's tenure, with, in this case, in this industry. If you got tenure in this industry and you've been doing so for a while, I mean, you have to kind of respect, that person's tenure. And my thing is when I first started, there were no chat groups. Heck, when I first started, there was no internet. There were bulletin boards and things of that nature, but AOL's bulletin boards, Prodigy, and different other things, but there were no bulletin boards or video chat sessions.
You remember
hangouts.
The magazine? You had a magazine that you could get that had Taxi in the back of it.
I mean, there wasn't nothing, man. It's like I spent hours and hours and hours and hours just trying to get my I/O set up, because it wasn't nobody I could ask.
Right.
Wasn't none of that, and so now, people coming up have access to YouTube videos and all sorts of other resources that we just didn't have.
That's true, man.
Wasn't available.
The past 20 years have yielded an amazing amount of advance technologically.
And so that's why a lot of the younger cats think they so smart. Because
no, you just had access to the information at an earlier age.
YouTube back in the day, Please, you wouldn't be able to tell me? Yeah, you know. So we learned the hard way, and by that I mean we actually learned. It's like, okay, I know I need to. Today it's like, okay, I know I need to connect up this to this, but do you know why?
Right.
How can you
Right.
troubleshoot if you don't know all the steps?
Right.
You know, if I mean, as an engineer by trade, you know, I have an aerospace degree. By trade, I'm an engineer. You know, so it's like I understand that in most things things are very systematic. A comes before B, B comes before C. If I go from A and I got C next, the problem is B. B didn't happen. And so what's happening with music now is everybody knows that you got to have an interface and a compressor, but you don't know those steps. You don't understand the theory behind what it is you're supposed to be doing. Once you understand that, now you can be as creative as you want to be. But if you don't even know how to use the tool, you're just getting lucky if you get something that's okay. If you got something that's good, you just got lucky. You can't repeat it.
Right.
I don't understand how anybody can say they can actually repeat what they do time in and time out unless they're using the exact same material like a plug-in. Like you said earlier, that plug-in, when that setup was saved, there were some givens. It's this tone, it's this amplitude, it's this whatever. But it doesn't mean it's going to work on every type of material. You know, so it's a good place to start. I may use a preset. I may use a preset to start just to give me an idea of what that person was thinking, you know, and maybe some things I should be looking at. But I rarely start with a preset that I don't change. This gives me a starting place.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as far as what you were saying about technology, that also extends to this format here.
Exactly.
I've been doing these things since they started them, which I don't know how many years ago it was, but before this format, which is pretty stable, they had other corny formats where like you had a bunch of checkerboard people like the Brady Bunch, and it was ridiculous. But the point is that as soon as this format arrived, I was like, well, that's it for conferences, because what we're doing right now is the equivalent of a South by Southwest panel.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And we're all in our own leisure environment.
Right, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
We're not paying any airfare. We're not paying for any hotels. No, food while we're in Austin, Texas. We're all, once we click, goodbye or whatever on the thing, we're just right back to our regular lives doing what we normally do. And it's also at the same time we're kicking it with each other live, and it's being archived so people can watch it asynchronously.
Right.
So it's like South by Southwest, you go over there and there's a panel and you hear about it, and then you're like, where are the videos? And they just don't arrive for like months, if they arrive at all. So that's why I said, as soon as I saw this stuff, I was like, well, that's it for conferences, because you have a conference every single day.
Yeah. This is amazing, to me. I've learned, and and I teach, so I always suggest to my students, get out there and get in these forums, man. I mean, there was no gear sluts and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, get out there, and I mean, you have to take some things with a grain of salt, but the point is just get out there and network and communicate, and these forums, these video sessions and stuff, they're great. I mean, not only do you learn stuff, man, in a lot of cases you establish relationships and friendships.
Absolutely.
With people, and you begin to network, man, and it's like, hey, man, if I need video, let me hit Bill up. Hey, Morris and Rodger, and you begin to network.
Right. If I need some mastering for iTunes, I know who to call.
Hey, if you wanted to be official.
That's right.
Hey, so did Dave ever talk to Mayor about that?
I wasn't familiar that they were going to chat about that.
Oh, he had mentioned he was going to ask Mayor if if he was on the list.
Okay, I can shoot him a text.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Mayor is amazing, you know. But I just, it's just funny, man. You know, you don't get anything. You don't get a certificate. You don't get, you know, the only thing they send you is what I could have got already, and then just snag the, you know, master for iTunes off the website. But they send you that, but that's about it. And they send you an email that says, welcome, you know, you've been accepted, you know, we were glad to, you know, blah, blah, blah. But I've since learned that it's worth some money to be on the list. So, anyway, gentlemen, it's 11 o'clock Eastern time. You and Morris are both Eastern. It's 10 o'clock my time. And can I ask you a personal question, Bill? How old are you?
I don't actually discuss that because I have to interact with chicks of all ages. So
Don't ask you when we record.
Bill said that pimping ain't easy.
And hell no, it's not, and that needs to remain variable.
I got
you.
In other words,
you're gonna have to ask him that off.
He will be editing that question out of this archive.
Right. 3x plus y equals z. It's a variable.
I got you.
That's funny.
I got you.
But nah, I'm not a spring chicken either. I'll put it that way.
I got you. So really, what you're saying is you're a lot older than you look.
That would be the case.
Okay, I got you.
Well, you know, hey man,
don't matter to me, long as I still get carded for alcohol.
There you go. Hey man, so edit my age out too. I said 31. 31.
Yeah, I'm sure, but yeah, okay.
Well, do it like the chicks do. You're on your 19th, 30th birthday.
Ah.
Yeah, 1930. Mug is 50 years old for real. But right, yeah, man, I'm gonna run to get myself together here.
Yeah, I was gonna say when you get to be 31 and 10 o'clock hits, you gotta lay down.
Gotta lay down.
Yeah, you can't hang, man.
Definitely can't go through the day without a nap.
Well, you know, hey, man, you know, all I'm gonna say is that I'll see when I get there.
Is that he'll let you know how it is?
I'll let you know how it is once I get there.
Good chat, fellas. Yeah, we'll definitely get on those compression and verb topics in the near future.
All right, sir.
Okay, brother. All right, man. Bless you guys.
Appreciate both of you. Have a good night.
Take care, man. Peace.
Peace.